Living life outside, need to do more than just survive. Gather with people who know on CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show. CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show. Keep the adventures alive.
Tonight's episode of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show is brought to you by Kid Products, stick stoves and reflector ovens proudly made in Canada. Algonquin Outfitters, with 5 key locations in and around Algonquin Park to serve your backcountry needs. Salis Marine, keeping you safe on the water since 1999. OSTROM Outdoors, custom fit canoe packs and barrel harnesses. And Novacraft Canoes, connecting you with nature in Canadian-made canoes since 1970. Well, happy Tuesday evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show. And evidently, I have a dandruff problem here. How we all doing tonight? My name is Dennis, also known as Canoe Hound, and if this is your first time visiting the show, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. We got a good show for you tonight. One of those little how-to, learn how to, this, that, and the other thing type of show going on tonight, so we're going to have a fun time with this. We do have a couple of great guests and maybe a couple of people popping in throughout the show to share some knowledge with you tonight. With tonight's topic of gear storage and maintenance tips while we get ready for the winter season that is approaching. Many of us, our adventures are kind of done, and some have some late fall trips, but we're going to learn how to properly store your gear and have it ready for the next adventuring season in the spring. So, but before we get on with that, we do have a few things that we would like to, or I'd like to share with you while the chat over there gets all populated. I can see we got quite a few people already in the chat. Hello to all of you. Thanks very much for tuning in tonight. All kinds of my channel members and stuff. Thank you very much. This past weekend, I was in Barrie, Ontario at the Great Canadian Outdoors Show. It's a smaller show, but you know what? It was a fun show. We got to meet a lot of really cool people, got to make a lot of new subscribers to the channel here. If you are new and you happen to be at the show and you're in the chat there, hello. And it was so nice to meet you at the show. Thanks very much for that. You know what? I had the opportunity to meet a couple of other YouTubers, and actually I got to meet with Jason Irwin, Camper Christina showed up, and a couple of others, but I also got to meet a guest from a couple of weeks ago. Wyatt Black was there, kind of his neck of the woods up there. He's from Bracebridge, Ontario. Me being down in Barrie there, you know, it was an hour drive for him to maybe not even that much to pop on down. And he and his wife come down. We had some good conversations, and we talked like we known each other for many years. So Wyatt, if you happen to be tuning in, thanks very much for popping by. It was certainly a pleasure to meet you, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time either. If you missed last week's show, we had the host of Wild Ontario News, James Aloff, on. And we had all kinds of funny conversations. We talked about some of the topics at hand that he covers on his Wild Ontario News, the podcast, and on his Instagram channel. For any of you that may have missed that show, there is a link down here just below in the description. There's a few links there right visible down there that you can actually click on, and you can go back and you can check out all of our 140 past episodes of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show. If you ever get bored one night and you want to do one of those binge watching sessions, a couple bowls of popcorn, a couple soda pops, please be my guest. Please be my guest. One of our sponsors, OSTROM Outdoors, is actually having a giveaway. They're having a giveaway teamed up with the Trip Shed. If you go to OSTROM Outdoors, and I'm going to put the link here going across the bottom, but you could also find it in the description below. You can go there and you get yourself all set up and get yourself entered into the draw. Ostrom Outdoors is giving away a Winnisk canoe pack, and the winner will also get a $100 Trip Shed gift card, I believe. So if you want more information on that, go to Ostrom Outdoors, or you can go to their respective Instagram pages, and they have their giveaway announcement on there. So by all means, check it out. While you go over to Ostrom Outdoors, check out their website to see what they have to offer. They have some fantastic packs. Proud to say, I just got, for those of you that know me and they know the show and they know about my current Ostrom pack, it has a nickname of Big Red. Well, Big Red 2 just came in the mail the other day, along with one of their fantastic barrel harnesses, and I can't wait to give them a try and break them into the backcountry as well. So by all means, get on over there, check out Ostrom Outdoors, and get yourself entered into their draw. I'd like really quickly to welcome a new channel member that come on the show joined up last week. I believe the name is Imana. Thank you very much. I haven't received your email yet with your information, so if you can please make sure you send that across to me, we will get your perk started. We'll get your membership decals out and such. No channel membership milestones to speak of today, but just to say that all of my channel members, I greatly appreciate you. You're all floating across the bottom of the screen there, and you're always in my dreams. So thanks very much for the support that you throw along to CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show and the channel here, and it's really greatly appreciated. For anybody that may wish to become a channel member, just saying, right down around here, you'll see a join button. Feel free to hit that at any time. It'll open up a little information video, and you can go through the different options that are available. Great way to support the channel, and keeps me in coffee and keeps my gear and the the streaming software and all this stuff going. So that's kind of where all that goes. And then, of course, I just wanted to say thank you to Jay and Sherry once again as my Buy Me a Coffee members, as they do every week. Thanks very much. Let's take a dip. A nice hot coffee. That'll last me a little while. Then I might have to get into some scotch with one of our guests that'll be on tonight. Let's see. Birthday announcements and birthday wishes. I haven't got many this week, but I do have to wish my son-in-law Maxwell a happy birthday. That'll be coming up this weekend. And it's funny because 2 weeks ago, I wished my wife a happy birthday, and last week I wished my mom a happy birthday, and now another very special lady in my life is celebrating a birthday this week. My puppy Molly. Molly is turning 10 years old this week. One of the best, sweetest dogs you'll ever meet if you ever have the opportunity, and she will be 10 years old this week. So to my dog Molly, happy birthday. Love you, pup. And then let's see here. If you have any special events coming up, make sure you please do send it across to me. You can send that to me over at canoehound@gmail.com. And as I say every week, this is the magical email address. If you have anything such as a guest or a topic you'd like to see on the show, please do drop me that information, and we'll do our darndest to make that happen. Now, we're going to get on with tonight's show, the topic, because we have a lot to cover. I hope we can cover it within our 2-hour frame here. We may go into a bit of overtime, as we always do with these types of shows, but we'll see what happens. We'll take it as it comes. But we will be breaking tonight's show into like little mini segments where we'll be talking about particular items: canoe, stoves, backpacks, sleeping systems, tents, and such. And just trying to share the essentials with you so that you can make sure that you get your gear stored in a proper fashion so that, like I say, it's all ready for you in the spring. Now is the time to do all the maintenance on your equipment as well. So make sure you give that a try. So without further ado, let's get on with this. With autumn in full spring for many of us, and the adventures and paddling seasons are drawing to an end for the season. Tonight, we'll be chatting and sharing maintenance and storage tips for your camping gear to assure it is ready for peak performance next spring. To help with the conversation, tonight we're going to be joined by good old Kevin Callan. And we got, right now, we have Dan Walker, who's the lead repair technician from Novacraft Canoe. How you doing, Dan?
I'm great. Glad to be here with you guys, Dennis. And Kevin,
don't be
wow.
No, don't be glad. Dan, what happens is he has nobody else for the show and he just asks us. Happens
Yep.
every week. Every
You got
week.
that right. Gotta have the co-hostess with the mostest, right?
No, Dan is an expert. Dan is an expert. No, Dan, no. Dan.
Opposite.
Oh, Dan is that guy down
there
there
we
is
go.
an expert.
Yes,
But yeah, I got an email this morning. Oh, Kevin, what are you doing tonight? And because Dennis
Tonight?
knows I have no
I
life.
asked you this last week, Kevin. Come on, man.
No, not true. I'm just
Well, you know
joking.
what, Kevin? Everybody knows you, but Dan, tell us a little bit about yourself and let people know why I actually invited you to be on the show tonight.
Dan is awesome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I've been doing repair and trimming and outfitting for Novacraft Canoe for a couple of years now. But previous to that, I had about 25 years of experience as a canoe trip leader, canoe trip guide across Ontario, Southern Ontario. I want to be specific about that. I haven't done any of the wonderful trips north of Sudbury yet because I would love to. But my kind of specialized in taking groups of kids, teens particularly, at-risk teens who probably wouldn't have got out on the water otherwise. So I had connections through the OPP, connections through my local court system where I was based at the time in the Stratford, Ontario area. And we would truck the kids north and sometimes west and east just to check out some different areas. Have multiple certifications through Paddle Canada, doing Canadian style paddling, single and together, dual. I can't remember what their terminology was. Tandem. There we go. That's the fancy word. As well as moving water certifications as well. I kind of am a little bit addicted to doing whitewater in an open boat, and it's kind of stupid, but it's a lot of fun.
If you're not afraid to get wet, right?
That's kind of a given. Yeah, I know I'm going to get wet. It's just how much stuff do I have to chase later? That's the big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
So in moving on with the topic here, so we got a vast majority of our viewers are probably canoers or kayakers, just because of the name Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show, right? Dan, what can you tell us about, like, this is the time of year that a lot of canoes are going into storage, or what should we be doing in preparation for putting our canoes into storage? What things should we be looking for in our canoe?
Immediately, top of my head, give it a wash, because we tend to put them away and they're filthy. They're not clean. They're not looked after. Give it a good cleaning. Use some dish soap would be great, just to get that grime and grit off of the boat. And then that gives you opportunity to go over it pretty in detail to see, okay, how's my hull holding up? How are my gunnels doing? Do I need to do any work on my interior trim, like my yoke, my thwarts, my seats, the handles, my decks? Are they getting filled up with a mud? Because sometimes we have to flip them over on shore and they just get jammed into the shore. We need to clean all that out, get it cleaned up and ready to go so that we're ready. It's a pristine boat to go in the spring, as we've been talking about. I'd also really recommend using something as a UV protectant. It kind of sounds ridiculous because we're talking about gel coats and different polyester and vinyl esters and all of these different types of materials, but they do start to dry out and get brittle. So now when we're putting stuff away, awesome time to add that UV protectant. It does actually do a little bit of moisturizing. It's good for the skin and the complexion, but it's also awesome for the boats. It really helps them survive through the winter. Awesome time, as we've been talking about, check the gear over. Are there repairs I need to do? Kind of at spray 9. Yeah, good idea. We've got some different things that we can use. Like we have products that we use at Novacraft because I'm going to represent here for you all. And we have some materials that we use and I would recommend, but anything you use is better than not. Quite frankly, unless it's acetone, don't do that.
Right. So what kind of things are you recommending? That like, okay, you've washed your canoe, let it dry. Now, what are we like? Are we talking about applying like a wax on it or something, or like a turtle
Um,
wax, or
if you would like to use a lot of automotive products are really good, but you have to remove them. Like when you buff them on, buff them off. You
Mhm.
kind of let for automotive products, you let them get cloudy, and then you buff it off, and it's shiny and beautiful. We use what's called Aqua Buff. It's a specific product, and it goes on wet, and you basically keep it wet until the boat is shiny, and it's wax on, wax off, and it's nonstop over. I'll deal with probably 12 boats a day, dealing with getting them all shiny and making them look beautiful in various conditions. Today I was working on a Royal X. And we, instead of using a wax on Royal X, we use a product called 303. That actually moisturizes that top layer, makes it look amazing. And it does provide a little bit of protection for it as it's out in the UV rays. And it's good for a few months, depending on how often you get it wet. It does break down over time and you have to reapply, but it's super simple to do. Just spray bottle it on, buff it, you're good to go.
well, does it make your canoe go any faster in the water? Oh,
Uh, you might, depending on how you beat it up, right, Kevin?
yeah. Well, we're speaking of that. Will it help get rid of all the scuff marks on the bottom of
Oh,
the
stop it.
Prospector 16 special
It
edition?
actually does diminish the way they look. Yeah, if you've got a gel coat, particularly a clear gel coat with where you want to see the material underneath, you're going to see some of those marks anyway. But it does diminish some of that. If you've got a colored boat, particularly an SP3 plastic or vinyl, or even a Royal X. I've got two Royal X outside beside my house here, and I put that 303 on there, and they clean up so nice. They look really good. They're shiny for about 2 weeks, and then I abuse them, and they're not shiny anymore. But yeah, it does make them look better, and you'll notice once you got a clean boat, it always feels faster. I don't know why, but it always does. When you get a clean boat
Like
or a
every
new
time you
boat,
wash your car, the car seems to run better, right?
it's pretty to look at, as well as it actually does glide through the water a little bit nicer.
Certainly. So now you've cleaned your canoe. Well, I guess you can call it a vehicle. And what happens when you find any gouges, scratches? What's the best way to repair, say, for instance, a sizable gouge? Kevin, I'm not talking about you. Well, maybe you are, but or something
Yeah.
that's really where it's showing the fiber of the canoe itself or kayak.
You just have to tell people that don't know what's going on here. I borrowed the new clear design this year for the Mississippi River trip from Noacraft, and there was no water in the river. And even though it was spring, there was no water, and we walked the river. And I brought it back to Noacraft, saying, "Here's your boat back." And Dan, you were there, and you looked at me like, "What is wrong with you?"
Yeah, pretty much anytime that the fabric is showing through the gel coat, that needs to be taken care of, because what happens is water will get into the fabric, and over time the water does soak in, dries out, soaks in, dries out, soaks in, dries out, and then if it has retained any water whatsoever when you put it away for the winter and that freezes, it creates more cracks. You get that freeze thaw that happens naturally, especially if you store your boat outside and it's not undercover, and snow loads up on top of it. That water and the ice packing on top of the hull will actually widen those cracks and do more damage to the finish at a minimum, sometimes even breaking it open over time. Now, I'm not talking just instantly. It's like the first freeze thaw that you get. That's not going to do it, but it will over the course of the winter. Suddenly you've got a boat that, hey, I better take care of this stuff before I put it in the water, rather than, oh, I could have just taken a half hour, an hour, 45 minutes and just looked after it with a bit of gel coat, or even, if it's a small scratch, just give it a good heavy waxing. That will help too with maintenance. That's not a fix. That's just maintenance. But yeah, that'll look after some of those smaller things. If you've got really big damage, like large open cracks, or where you've got pieces of gel coat that have cracked or opened or come off, as happens when impacts happen to your boat, then yeah, you need to look after those. And if you're super handy, we can get you that stuff. The gel coat kits, we can provide you those things for a fee, and we'll look after you to make sure you can fix it. Or if you really want to, you can make the trek to London, Ontario, and we're happy to set you up in our queue to get you looked after, so it comes back and looking as best as it's going to look.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's always a treat going into the London paddle shop as well. They got so much stuff in there to check out.
Yes.
So I'd say if it's bad, take it to Dan and let Dan fix it, right? But so Dan, what about applying, like, when you have a gouge like that, what about applying epoxy? Is it the same as gel coat, or should you stick with putting gel coat on the canoe itself?
You need to know what your material is before you really dive in. Epoxy is going to stick to most things, particularly if you've got an SP3, which is a plastic product, or a Royal X. It's going to stick to that really well as long as you do the prep for it. Rough it up. Sandpaper, 80 grit is awesome. Just get it roughed up, and you can put the epoxy in. We use a product for Royal X and plastics. It's called Aquamend. Some people swear by that to take it on a trip, because it's a 2-part epoxy that comes as a putty, and you just cut off a little bit, work it all out so that it's gray instead of gray and green. Once it turns solid gray, you can mush that in and it'll dry, and you can do that underwater while you're in the lake or in the river. You don't have to bring it out and dry it out to do that, and it will cure by itself underwater while you're tripping.
Well,
It's pretty incredible stuff, and that will last you quite a while. It does dry out, particularly on some of those plastic or oil-based products. Then it will dry out and eventually chip, but it's sandable. When you get home, you can clean it up really nicely and repaint it. I do recommend, if you have a gel coat on your boat, use gel coat to fix it. It's what it's meant for. It adheres the best. It actually creates a chemical bond, so that it's no longer just a patch. It's actually new boat. So you can actually fix that boat. It's not just it's not just a quick patch.
cool. Okay, good to know. Good to know. Now, what about storing the boat? What's the best way to store a boat?
Absolutely. Best case scenario, indoors, heated. Best case scenario. I don't know anybody who does.
Right.
Everybody, sorry, I do know one or two that actually have some beautiful old boats they hang in their living room off their ceiling. But I stole a toy from my son today. So I have this beautiful little blue boat just to demonstrate. You notice that it's not right side up. A lot of people like to hang their boats on the fence. So if my hand is the fence, they'll hang their boat on the fence. Yes, that will work. But what happens is you end up distorting the gunnels, and they will actually over time change shape, and it will actually bend down. So you have slight bit of a banana shape to it. What happens then is, when you get in the water to paddle, your boat then wants to turn in a circle. Particularly if you've got an older plastic boat, or one of those Canadian Tire special or Costco specials where they're plastic. Over time, though, if you're hanging it sideways on a fence, which seems like a great idea, it doesn't take up a lot of space. It puts a lot of pressure, especially if there's snow gathering on it over the winter. You'd be amazed at how heavy snow is, and that can put a lot of pressure on the gunnels and actually change the shape of the boat, if not break things. Ideally, you want it sitting on the gunnels on a rack of some kind. It can be on the ground, but just get it so it's up on some wood of some kind, or if you've got some old workhorses or something, chop them down so that it gets it just off the ground, and then it's sitting 6 to 8 feet apart, and then sitting on your gunnels like that. That's ideal if you can do that. Also, under cover. If you can, keep the snow off. I've fixed so many boats where the snow load in certain areas, like my sister used to live north of Parry Sound, and she had 4.5 feet of snow sitting on top of her canoe in her yard. because they couldn't go out and put it away in time, and it got frozen in. So it was kind of there. So spring thaw came around, and I ended up fixing 4 or 5 different cracks that had happened because they had several 100 pounds of snow and ice that had sat on it. And then we're pretty sure a bear had crawled over top of it as well at some point. So because there was prints in the ice when we were watching it thaw out. It was like one of those situations that, if you can get it under cover, if even better into like a nominally heated garage. My garage doesn't have any direct heat in it, but because of the ambient heat from the house and 2 of the walls are shared with the house, that keeps it just above freezing in my garage, so that snow melts. And that's ideal if you can do that. If you have to store it outdoors, like most of us, try to keep it level, as I mentioned, so it sits on the gunnels. If you've got a rack that stacks, that's cool because it'll protect the ones below, and you only need a small roof. I don't recommend, and this may flame some people, but I don't recommend throwing a tarp over it so that the tarp is touching the boat. What happens is you get a lot of condensation and moisture in between the tarp and the boat, and the different materials don't always play nice. Sometimes it causes damage to the surface. Often it's purely cosmetic, but occasionally that can actually cause damage and create a brittle area in your boat that you don't want to find it in the river. You'll want to find that before you get it wet.
Sure. Now, I also see. Well, we have a lot of kayakers in the chat. Is it pretty much the same thing for a kayak, or does a kayak hang differently than a canoe?
A kayak definitely hangs different than a canoe because you don't have the gunnel structure and you've got a deck that is part of the structure of the boat. You can put a kayak in a sling. It can be upside down. It can be right side up, however you want. If it's under cover, you can even hang it right side up. If it's like a composite material, like a fiberglass or a Kevlar or whatever material of boat you want to put on it, if it's one of those, then it's probably better to hang it upside down so the stresses are put on the edges rather than on the deck or on the hull. If it's a plastic boat, like so many have shown up in Facebook Marketplace, I couldn't believe how many have popped back into the world. And a lot of them, you can tell exactly where people have strapped it to their vehicle, and you can see exactly where they've strapped it on, or it's been sitting in there, hanging in their garage or hanging in their shed, because the plastic boats do deform. Heat does wonderful things to plastic, so that they will actually change shape a little bit. A canoe can totally be in a sling as well. I actually use an A-frame sling, so it's got a bar, and then the sling goes up around, and then it goes up to a pulley system, so it gets the boat up off my floor and out of my way. But I've managed to get a 17-foot boat into my garage, out of the way, and the garage door takes up most of the space. It's not that big a garage, so it can be done if you're a little bit inventive. Yeah, somebody here is giving you a hard time, Kevin, or I don't know if you're seeing those comments there.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin, do you have any questions regarding that? I know you've got quite the collection, so.
No, I'm actually really paying attention to Dan. I know Dan, and he really knows his stuff. And when I'm quiet, that means that, yeah, I'm speechless. A couple of questions that came up, though, Dan. I think in Rolex time, too, was more important because I had that problem. If you don't loosen the screws in the fall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so what happens with that, Dan?
Yeah, what happens is, particularly when you have a Rolex that has wooden gunnels, particularly wood, it can happen with other materials as well, aluminum, but most likely with wooden gunnels. The wood and the Rolex expand and contract at vastly different rates. So that whole idea, well, it sits out in the sun, things get warmer and a little longer. So your 16-foot canoe becomes 16-foot one, whereas the gunnel only becomes 16 and a quarter. So you see that much. I'm just throwing random numbers out. I don't know exactly what they are. I don't want anybody going crazy about that. But the idea remains the same, that the hull will dramatically change compared to the gunnels. And that's when you get those cracks that appear at the gunnel and then up the side of the boat. They're called cold cracks. And what that is just, okay, all you need to do is loosen off your screws so that the boat can move and kind of breathe as it expands and contracts with the temperature changes. So if you loosen the screws, you don't have to take the screws out, but just loosen the screws on the outside of your gunnel so that it actually allows that bit of movement. And then in the spring, before you put it in, when you're doing your check before you go, you tighten them all down again, just snug. You don't need to reef on them. It's not like you need your drill to get it going. Just snug them up, and then you'll be good to go. It's a great opportunity then to oil your wooden ones and check over your vinyl or your aluminum gunnels then as well. So it's primarily with wood. Sometimes aluminum will do a similar thing, less likely. But on Royal X really moves. If you're still blessed to have one of those boats, you do have to pay attention to those.
Cool.
So Dan, you know that Sarah at Novacraft won't let me have wooden gunnels anymore because I don't take care of them. Like, this is why you're on the show and I'm not talking, because like I don't take care of my canoes. But one thing about it, but oiling or putting it's not oil, it's varnish. So varnish versus oil. So going into oil, like I will oil more so than varnish because varnish will brittle and fall apart eventually. But with oil, if you look at the different oils, if you can talk about that, because I do know that I think it's linseed oil actually does not do well with fungal growth or mold, whereas hemp oil is more organic and actually repels that. So when in the springtime, all of a sudden your wooden gunnels are kind of blah, and they have this mold on it. Yeah. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, it's often the wood gunnels, because wood is a very, very porous material and it naturally wants to rot. It's wood. So it allows the spores to actually dig in, and they get right into the wood, and then that's when it dies or a part of it's continuing to grow and the roots are set in into the wood. That's when you see that black or that greenish hint to it. If it's bright green, it's probably on the surface, and that can come off. To get rid of just a real quick, you can sand it down and then oil it again. I do find that there's a lot of contention, I guess, within the canoe nerds like us about whether you use a varnish or an oil, what kind of oil. Natural oils like linseed, if you're going to use a linseed oil, make sure it's boiled linseed oil. It's how it's been processed. It's how it's prepared for us. So that actually does help a lot if you're going to use linseed. As our factory uses tung oil, TUNG, tung oil. That's what we put on our wooden gunnels. And that actually can be reapplied once a year, twice a year, if you really feel like you're up to it. And that will look after the wood. That's what I use when I'm patching up. Someone has some varnish that's worn through on like a yoke or something. I'll sand it down, get it nice and smooth, so there's no edges, no sharp bits coming off of the varnish. And I'll apply the tung oil. Tung oil really is absorbed. It gets into the grain of the wood, whereas the varnishes tend to soak in a little bit, but they stay mostly on the surface. It's a great protectant, does an excellent job until it breaks, until, as you say, it gets brittle. UV eats everything. Varnish is no exception. Oil will actually, it dries it out. After the sun just dries it right out over time. So that's why you have to reapply it. If you use tung oil, or as I've seen in some of the comments here, you get some people using some different types of lemon oils and things like that. They will work as well. It's like I said at the beginning, a little bit of something is better than nothing at all. We've got to look after it, and it'll give us years, not just a year or two, but decades. I finished a boat for someone, a Novacraft prospector, just recently, that was 35 years old and was beat the crap out of, but it was still going strong. So when I was done with it, we'd re-gunneled it. It was everything. It was in great shape because they had looked after it. But they'd used it heavily, but they'd looked after the gunnels. They'd looked after things. So they just wanted the retrim simply because it made it look pretty. It was fine. It could have been okay the way it was. but they want it to look pretty and look newer again for the next generation to use because they're handing it down to another generation. And I love that.
Cool.
Hey, Dan, what have you ever got a canoe given to you at the shop and you were like, no way, I can't fix this? No,
Probably one of yours. Yeah.
Actually, yes, we have had. I'll get to the question there, John H, in just a moment. Thank you for that. Yeah, we've had boats that come in where the labor hours are going to be more than the boat a replacement boat would be worth. It just made no sense to put that kind of money into a boat. But then we've also had a boat that was in worse shape where I actually literally cut. Here's my little toy again. I cut like 3.5 feet out of the bottom because it was so beat up and patched so badly. I had to cut a giant hole out of the hull and then rebuild it. Normally you just say, okay, just chop it up, throw it in a dumpster. It's done, buy a new boat, because that's a lot of damage.
It's a bookshelf.
This person, this was their baby. They wanted their baby back and they wanted it, they wanted it done right. So yeah, that they spent the money on it where they could have actually just bought a new boat for what they paid in the repair, because there's just so much time that goes into some of those bigger repairs like that. I personally love it because that's a huge challenge. Most of the stuff we deal with, I nickname it lipstick because it just makes it look good. It's good maintenance, but it just makes it look good. But yeah, when you get into some of those bigger ones, yeah, it's sometimes we actually turned one down last month. They brought it in and it was like, yeah, they'd found it in a rapid. It had been pinned and they took it out. They have no idea whose boat it was. They got it out of the rapid. I don't know. It was a different brand. It wasn't a Novacraft, but I don't think anything would have survived that. And they were asking, can we fix this up? Is it worth doing? And I had to tell them, I said, yeah, we can fix it. How much money do you want to spend on it? It's just so much. It's like, and then I would never trust that boat again. It would be, I'd be great for out in the river or just, that quiet evening paddle on the lake, just like what's behind Dennis there. Just take that kind of nice evening paddle, no problem. But man, if that boat ever hit a rock, it might explode.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, there's sometimes that doesn't work. Question came: is it all right to hang
question here? And
yeah.
we'll take John's question, and we're going to move on to talking about stoves and other equipment too.
You betcha. Is it all right to hang my Kevlar canoe right side up with straps from the ceiling of my garage? Right side up is fine. What you'll find is the straps, depending on the material, will actually over time dig into the gel coat or whatever the vinyl is on the outside, and you'll get this strap mark where it just kind of looks like it's got this grid on that spot if it's just sitting right side up. Most of the time, even if you just got straps, it's better to hang it facing down. So it's upside, the boat is upside down. So I'm assuming John's talking about hanging it like this with some straps holding it up. That's cool. That will work, but over time, you're going to start seeing that little bit of deformity especially with Kevlar. It tends to like to give, whereas you hang it by the gunnels, you won't get any of that. You can make the same argument. You hang it like that, the dust collects on there. If you don't clean that properly, it'll damage the gel coat too. Yeah, it will. If you've got a raccoon crawling across there, that'll do wonders for it too. If you got cat crap and rat crap or mouse crap or raccoons doing their business and having a party on the back of your boat, that's not good for it either. But you got to clean that off before the acids and that type of stuff really dig into the gel coat or the material. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think we covered quite a bit on canoes there.
That was a lot on the boats. Yeah.
More than I thought. That's you know what? I actually learned stuff because I store my my Royalite on the side of my house and it's there all year round. Mind you, it's covered by a tree, so it doesn't get a lot of sun hitting it all the time.
Yeah.
It's but
UV is the big deal. It's UV and weight. It just that's what does the damage. If it's working for you and you're not noticing any damage, then have at it. Just be aware of what can happen, I guess.
Yeah. So Dan, the one canoe I have that actually my flag canoe I've had for years. I have a for storage, right? So the UV is really bad on it this year, more so than ever. Is that just done, or can I seriously clean that up in the spring?
It could probably come back a little bit. UV damage is actually damage. It's not just if you notice on a snowbank in the spring, when you see the snowbank has all those little divots in it where it looks like somebody sprayed it with water or something, it's just the sun melting it away, and you see that on a snowbank. It does the same thing on a lot of canoes. It's just on a microscopic level, and that just those little bits and the particulates build up in there, and it breaks it off, and you lose a little bit of the hull. Over time, that makes a big difference. Over one season, not usually too much, although the way our weather and climate has been, UV is going to be, I think, a bigger deal than we've had to deal with in the past. It's just the way it is. So if you can have it covered in some way where you have something over it that shades it, it's on the north side of a house even, or on the somewhere where it's not in direct sunlight, that's going to help it. It's going to give it longevity. The UV won't cause as much damage. It's still going to, because it's in the light, but yeah, it'll be okay.
Cool. Good to know. It'll be
If you want to bring it in, Kevin, I'm happy to work on it for you.
I don't know. I'll bring it in for sure. Let's just say I have 12 canoes, and I'll keep you busy all year.
Cool. You know what? Another big thing here. Let's talk about tents and hammocks. Best things to do, Kevin, for your canoes and tents come the fall season here when you're putting it away.
Yeah. Sorry. Dan was doing such a great job here. I was like, no, I gotta use it. Well, for tents, what I do in the fall is I brush it out with a brush, not a wire brush, like a soft brush, and making sure all the debris is out. I shake it all out. I check the seam seals. The tents I have, I generally don't redo seam seals. They're good quality tents, which actually is something saying too. I've had Eureka tents for years, and now they're no longer. I don't know if you guys know about that. But today they're done. They've been around for years. So, but anyway, yeah. So I would seam seal it if it needed it, and would do that. If also I found that the water was not beating and falling off the outside fly, it was soaking in, that's a sign that actually the repellent is done on that fly. If it's good quality tent, you should not have to do these things. But what I would do for that is that there's that spray you can get, and that would help. If you don't want to do this spray and buy it at an outdoor store, what I've done too is I haven't put a tent fly in the washing machine, even though in theory you can, in a front loader, not an agitator. You can do that, but then I would put it on low heat in the dryer for 20 minutes, and that rejuvenates that repellent, just like a Gore-Tex jacket. That's exactly what you do with the Gore-Tex jacket, because after a while, if it doesn't bead anymore, the water is soaking in that original material or chemical they put in there to repel is not working anymore. So you wash it. I do not wash it in a detergent, especially the granule one. What I do, sorry, I get a big tub, and I live in a small place. I have no money, whatever, so I do everything on the cheap. So I get a tub, and I rinse all my tent pieces in that tub to get it nice and clean. And then I actually get a hair dryer, and I blow over that, and it rejuvenates the water repellent on it. And I seam seal it if needed be. I also go over all the guy ropes to make sure they're fine. But my guy ropes always have this elastic band at the end. Well, not elastic band, but
like a bungee type of thing. Yeah,
a bungee, because I always put bungees there because the wind is doing this when you're camping, right? So if you put bungee, it actually helps the fabric. So I just check that to make sure it's fine, and then just check that. And also the tent, what's it called? You put it underneath or inside the tent?
Your ground cloth, your ground sheet.
Yeah. So I always put it inside the tent. So a lot of people, we'd have this debate forever. I'm not sure what you do, but a lot of people will say, well, you put it on the ground, put the tent on top of that. Well, I don't do that, and we can debate all night about that, but I put it inside because the tent's going to eventually leak in the summer. When the water comes in, you have a barrier between you and your air mat, right? But with that, I wash that separate too in the bin. So I again, not my washing machine. I soak that and I wash that and just hang it. Make darn sure you put your tent away dry. But then again, you should be doing that after every single trip. Not if you're doing it now, you're done. It's going to be moldy as hell.
You're going to be needing a new tent. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So all the YouTubers that they know you'll watch all day will say, well, at the end of the year, make sure your tent is dry. Well, if you haven't checked it yet, you have no tent, right? So do that. And also the tent poles. If you have fiberglass poles, which you really shouldn't. I mean, they're cheaper, but I wouldn't do that because there's little fiberglass pieces that will actually go in your fingers and they'll be in your fingers forever. So you should get aluminum poles. But just check them and make sure they're not cracked. And if they're cracked, then you're going to have to either repair them or replace them. Just do those things. And then get excited to use it again.
Yeah. Now, what about storing it? You say store it dry, but should you roll it back up in its into its bag, or I like to put mine in a tote box?
Yeah, here's the thing. I can tell everybody this is what you're supposed to do. Everybody, you're supposed to store it loose, hang it if you can. Again, I've got this place here. I own like 10 tents, right? So I do put them in a burlap, not burlap, but it's open mesh bag. I do that, and I do it separate. And I don't know if it makes a difference, but I put the fly in a separate bag than the body. I do that when I go on trip anyway, too. But I always put them open so it's aerated. Yeah, I do that with my sleeping bag too. And with sleeping bags, wash them in a open front washing, not an agitator. Don't do that. If you don't have one of those, go to the quarter
laundromat
and do that. But get the chemicals that the stores sell you, even though you might say, no, this is a ripoff. I'm paying 3 times the amount of money for this detergent that's supposed to be work, but it works. You don't want any detergent that is you want scent free and not granular. And then if you have down, that's a big thing. Like you can wash a down bag for sure. First of all, I put a liner inside my bag because I stink a lot on trip.
We're not on bags yet.
So I put a liner inside my bag. So I'll wash that throughout the summer, and that helps my bag because instead of washing my bag all summer, I'll do the liner. But this time of year, I'll do that. And I prefer down, not synthetic. So if I do that, and yes, you probably heard about this trick, and Dan, you probably done this trick many times. You put 3 tennis balls in. Well, first of all, you wash the bag in warm water if you want, and gentle, and then you rinse it because you don't want that soap suds in there. You want to rinse it again, even if you take it out and go into the bin again or your bathtub and rinse it out, and then put it in your dryer and put it on gentle, and then put tennis balls or whatever, or maybe your first child, I'm not sure, put it in there. And that will actually not clump the down because you don't want that down to clump. And then you put that out and you dry it even more so and aerate it. And I do not stuff it back in. Well, you know what? I'm terrible at gear. Dan, you know this. I stuff all my stuff. I'm terrible. I should not even be on the show. But anyway, yeah. You're not supposed to stuff your sleeping bags because, especially down, because you want it to aerate throughout the winter, and do that. So yeah.
Again, that's like the best case scenario is you're in a nice warm, dry environment that you can do that where it's not going to get a lot of dampness or moisture in the air. Humidity is terrible for our gear. So if we're storing it long term, like Dennis was sharing one of his tricks, and he's got a little Ziploc baggie there. Dennis, you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. Okay, I'll show you this, but I have a couple things for tents too that I wanted to pass on. Everybody, you buy electronics, you buy furniture, sometimes clothing, whatever. A lot of times it comes with these little bags of it's like a silica, right? I believe.
No, you're supposed to eat those.
Yeah. They make great toppings on cakes and everything too. They're kind of granular.
A little bit of crunch.
These type of things. I always save these things, and as you can see, I got them in a plastic bag, and I utilize them when I'm storing a lot of my gear because if you throw stuff in a tote box, you could have moisture if you're storing in a basement, or if you're storing in a garage or something along that lines. You could always gain that moisture, but by saving these things and throwing them in, into a tote bag, or even if it's just a dry bag, or what do you call it, a cinch bag, one of those cinch bags. Anyways, you throw one of them in there too, and it just helps assure that it's going to stay dry. Now, I've been told that these things here, you can also, I don't know if it's true, and everybody could pipe up in the chat, but I understand you could actually throw these in the dehydrator to refresh them if they've gotten, if they've been in a moldy area or a damp area for too long. But you could actually put them in a dehydrator and draw the moisture out, and then you could utilize them. And these things are fantastic if you ever drop your phone in the toilet or in a lake and you need to dry it out. They say put it in rice, throw it in with this, 10 times better. So that's one of my tips anyways.
Dennis, what are you doing with your phone near the toilet?
In the toilet? I don't know, man. I've heard lots of stories. Put a 1 in the chat if you've dropped your phone in the toilet. Well, I'm just curious, right? And back to the tent too. I wanted with the tent there I had on there, Kevin touched on checking the seams for leaks, checking your stitching, because a lot of times you'll get stitching will start to come out, especially on zippers. You want to make sure your zippers are moving nice and fine. So you might want to use some sort of a zipper lubricant on there, or even just like, you'd be surprised, a little bit of oil on a cloth and just run it along the zipper seam.
Chapstick.
Yep. Let's see. Oh, if you have any holes in it, perhaps you've had your tent a little close to the fire and you got embers on there, you've burnt a hole. What do they call that stuff? Tenacious tape should be in your camping gear pack to make sure that there we go. Is that tenacious tape?
No, it's the tape I got though. It was on sale.
Okay. But some sort of tape, what, tenacious tape, or a clear gorilla tape from Gorilla Glue or whatever. They make good tapes that are really good for this type of thing to patch any holes that you might have in the seams. And I usually store my tents and my hammocks in a tote box loose with 1 or 2 of these bad boys in there, so I'm not going moldy. Yeah.
Well, because I live in a mansion, I have endless rooms to do that. So yeah.
Cool. So we have a bunch more gear, but somebody just popped into the basement that's going to share some information on how to properly maintain and store your paddles for the winter.
Oh, this is it,
Mike. Up from Badger Paddles.
Oh no, no, not Mike. Oh, look, I'm going to have a nap. I'm having a nap.
I think we all should have those T-shirts.
Look,
Mike. It should fit your hat.
So, Mike, what can you share with us about getting our paddles ready, because they've had a long, hard season, and what do we do to get them ready, and how do we store them?
First of all, Mike, before you continue, can you show us your scars from the poison ivy you had last week?
I'll show you the more innocuous ones. Actually, you don't want to see my legs. That's actually started 3 weeks ago. So that
Fiona didn't talk about the legs. She talked about some other area.
my legs were really bad. So yeah, I just fought it for like 3 weeks. So anyway, it's over now.
Okay, sorry, Mike. I just wanted to interrupt and continue.
I almost forgot about it for a minute.
So Mike, my feather has scratches. It has a few little dents from my Wabakimi trip. Has a heck of a lot of scuff marks on it. What do I need to bring that thing back to life again?
You have an oiled paddle, so that's the first thing. It's an oiled paddle, which is the easiest thing to maintain. So like if it's a varnished paddle and it's got a lot of scuff marks and dings and all that sort of stuff, it's a bit of a bigger job. You might be like sanding and getting out varnish and going out to the shed. But luckily, if you have an oiled paddle, which this is actually Fiona's paddle, which we paddled on the river here all summer with this paddle, and we were getting in from a dock, so it didn't push off a lot of rocks or anything like that, but it did get used a little bit this year. If your paddle got a little more used and got some dings on it, I start with the tip. So here's the tip of the paddle, and remember, this is for an oiled paddle. If it's varnished, it's a bit of a bigger job, and you're not going to be able to do it in your kitchen. But with this oil, you can just sit here and do it in your kitchen. So this is 220 sandpaper, and I don't know. I buy a lot of stuff like from industrial suppliers and all the rest of it. But the one thing that I always just buy at Home Depot is my sandpaper, because Norton has this really great sandpaper that they sell at Home Depot, and I find it works really well. So it's just the regular Norton paper that they sell at Home Depot. This is 220. This is the 400 that I'm going to use more in this for this. But all you need is that and a little bit of oil. And for maintaining your paddle, just like I'm using Badger oil straight out of the can, which is just 100% natural hemp oil. And that's, so it doesn't have any chemicals in it. It's slow drying. So it's a good time of year to do it. And just, you can do it 2 or 3 times over the winter if you like to, and it'll build a nice coat. You can almost create like a varnish finish with your oil if you want to. I usually give it 1 or 2 coats over the winter. We heat with wood here, so it's actually dry. It dries out. If I actually oiled it now and left it all winter and heated with wood all winter, it would actually be pretty dry. So I usually oil like a little closer to the spring as well. But this paper I just used, this paddle doesn't need it. It really didn't touch a lot of rocks and stuff like that. And I'm not going to scuff it up that much because it's not really needed. But this, if you've been pushing off rocks, if you've done a canoe trip, a lot of times after a canoe trip is when I do this. I just kind of clean up the tip of the paddle with like a 220 sandpaper, like so. And then take like a damp rag and just wipe the whole paddle down, which I did before all of this. So just wipe your whole paddle down with a damp rag, just so there's not any like dirt or gunge on the paddle when you start oiling it. And then little dipping cup. Little oil. You don't need that much.
What's that oil, Mike?
That's Badger wood oil.
So is that hemp oil?
That's hemp oil. Yeah.
What's the difference between that and tongue oil or linseed oil or
hemp oil? Has a lot of like way back before anybody got the idea that hemp was like a bad thing and it was criminalized. Like hemp was actually the preferred base for mixing paints. It has like a lot of anti-mold, anti-mildew characteristics like right in it. So inherently, it just naturally, you don't really need to add anything to hemp oil. It's super slow drying though. So like if I put this on this paddle and paddled it like tomorrow, it would just all come off. Like it takes a long time to dry. If you used hemp oil over a period of time, you'd actually create like a varnished finish almost, but you need forever to do that. So I think it's a great maintenance product. When we build the paddles in the shop and we're building a bunch, we don't have time to wait months and months and months for them to finish. So we actually mix like a Danish oil. I'm just going to oil this paddle while I chat. We mix like a Danish paddle. I really try to get as much on the tip as possible. If it's really bad, I might actually just like stick the tip in a little margarine container or something like that of oil and just let it like soak there for a little while, like for 15, 20 minutes or something like that.
So let's just say, Mike, that I was on a canoe trip. Could I use cooking oil or olive oil?
You could if you really had to. Like it wouldn't hurt anything at all. But again, it would just come off, right? Like if your paddle was like super dry where it was just like all you could feel was wood grain, that might help it a little bit. But for the most part, like it wouldn't hurt it. It would do the same sort of thing for it. It would moisturize the wood. But it would just probably come off. Like if you use Crisco on your paddle and when paddling the next day, you might get like a.
And if I go to Canoecopia with you next year, because you and I travel together to do Canoecopia, and we bring hemp oil, will we be arrested?
I haven't been.
So he's been carrying it.
It is. I have had issues with customs. I actually tend to ship it when I'm going over the border just because I don't want to have issues. But it's legal. There's nothing wrong with it. You can put it on your customs paperwork and take it with you. But I have had like delays as a result of that before, so I just tend to use Canada Post and send it.
Make mental note: do not travel with Mike again.
Okay. So Mike, you've applied the Badger oil just using a rag pretty liberally.
It's a wet rag, and I got it good and wet. Yeah, and I'm kind of like I'm trying not to slop too much.
Hi, Fiona.
But
oh my lord, that must be pretty good. The paddle is moving without Mike touching it.
Some levitation going on there.
So then this is the 400. So this is like wet and dry sandpaper.
I wish I could hand this to you. It's
Oh.
so bad, brother.
A few minutes.
Oh,
Wall ornament.
hey, Mike, look at Dan's paddle. Could you fix that, or is that just that? Is that firewood?
I wouldn't say it's firewood, but I would like, yes, I could fix it, but would you like it would cost more to fix that, like more time to fix
Oh,
that.
it's
what you need
split
by a
open.
paddle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have fixed stuff like that, like for people who was for sentimental reasons, but I feel horrible about it because it's kind of like expensive to do it because it's really time consuming to piddle around with stuff like that. But yes, anything can be fixed. But what I tend to tell people that it's just time to buy a new paddle, right? Every once in a while, your gear does just wear out, and it's time to just buy something new. So.
Now, Mike, the new kitchen behind you, was that Fiona's idea or yours?
I think it was a joint idea.
Oh, it was Fiona's. Yep.
All right. So now, explain what you're doing there.
Ideas.
Explain what you're doing there, Mike.
Full stop. I'm just now. This paddle is wet with oil, and I'm taking a 400 wet and dry sandpaper and just giving it a quick rub. I'm done the blade now. Like I'm not sanding really. I'm kind of just buffing. And what that does, I've already cracked the light fixture above me with my head.
What? What happened?
Yeah. Well, there's a light fixture right here, and it's kind of close. And
The first week you put it in.
Anyway, just kind of like gave the whole thing a quick rub. That's all the time you need to spend on it. Then it just like a dry rag, give it a wipe, and put it away. So if I did this today and then went paddling tomorrow, this wood oil wouldn't have really dried and it'd mostly come off. But if I got a week for this to sit, it's going to really take nicely. So that's why winter is a great time. Fall is a great time to get 1 or 2 coats of oil on your paddle for sure.
What
Mike,
do you think? Sorry.
Excuse me,
Dennis.
from Art and Design is asking, what do you think of Odie's original universal finish for a paddle?
I believe that's like a beeswax type finish. I'm not really 100% sure. I know it's something that people use as a I think they use it for resin tables and stuff. But to be honest, I don't know. I'd start with reading the manufacturer's, recommendations for it. But I haven't used it, so I can't really say too much about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question about the some people love those paddle socks.
Yeah.
Like, are those going to protect it, or are those going to hold in any sort of moisture or humidity?
Actually, one thing I actually sometimes put it in the sock when it's a little damp with oil. Like I don't mind if there's a little bit of oil kind of in the sock. So sometimes on we'll give it one sort of last coat before shipping, like say 6 hours before we actually ship it. And there's a bit of a grease to the paddle. And I just think that doesn't hurt at all. Like sitting on the sock on the paddle as the paddle sort of rubs on it. So it's, but it's not gonna, and it just what we found is first off, we just didn't like anybody who ships a paddle has to wrap it in something. So either you're using like one-use plastic or something that's reusable. And my mother-in-law was actually like sewing hockey socks together for us, like when I was taking like sample paddles around together. That was where the idea actually came from. But it's good. Like we were throwing them in the truck and it does kind of save them. So
yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
And so now, really quick, let's get the in a nutshell version of what to do to a varnished paddle.
I'm gonna just grab something here. I brought this came from the bin at Algonquin Outfitters in Oxtongue. This is out of one of their rental canoes. This is a yoke. This is a varnished yoke that's in a canoe that was about like 2 years old or something like that. So people think that varnish, first off, is something like you don't need to maintain varnish. If you're not a maintenance person,
Gotta get on it.
But what happens though, if you don't maintain varnish, you end up with something like this, right? Where the sort of peels on one end. And one thing that could have been done here is more varnish on the very end grain of this. Like when you maintain this, that's a big thing. Varnish get it everywhere. If you're varnishing your canoe parts, take your yoke out and varnish the end grain. You'll prevent what happened here, which it's funny. A lot of the canoes actually end up developing this fungus on them, like right at the line where the varnish kind of came off and wood could get under the grain.
No,
They developed
water.
this water could get under the grain. They developed this fungus. So varnish can really hurt you. If you got varnished parts, make sure you stay on top of the varnish, because if you got areas that aren't varnished, water gets under it and it stays there. And that's the biggest reason. Well, no, I don't like varnishing. That's the biggest reason we do oil. Oil is way easier to apply and it's nicer to work with. But it's easier to maintain something that's varnished. In this case, if it gets to this point, you're almost better not having finish on here. Like the wood would almost last longer if there was no finish to hold the moisture underneath it. So to answer your question though, Dennis, here's something that's kind of gone to a certain point where, like, what do I do with this now to maintain it? So you got like two choices, which is take it down to the wood and refinish it again, or just take your good old 220, maybe even start with something like 100 or 120 and sand it down really, really well, sort of feather this in so you got no more flaking or peeling or anything like that, and then just apply varnish liberally back over top of it, and maybe scuff your surface. It really helps with varnish also to know what the previous person put on, what the manufacturer put on, or what the other person, because if like you don't want to always be mixing like oil-based or water-based. So if someone used a spar varnish, you don't want to be putting like a polyurethane over top of it. There's a bit of guesswork involved when you're doing something like that, unless you can find out what was really used on top of it. Because otherwise you just put a finish on top of this and it just peels, right? And you can see how bad this is. Like, see, this is almost like perfect wood here because nothing really got under here. But look here, it's all just starting to rot.
Yeah. Okay. And now what about storing for the wintertime? You've maintained it now. We need to store them. Do we just lean them up against the wall? Do we
No,
put them in a
hang
wrapper?
it if you can. That's the best thing. If you lean something against the wall, you can, like certain woods. So if it's oiled, water, it can get a little, it's not as much of a barrier as varnish is, right? So it can accept some moisture from the environment here and there, right? So something that's leaned against the wall constantly could actually develop a little bit of a sag, and it could re-moisturize it and develop a little bit of a sag. Hanging is the best option. Just let gravity hold it straight for sure.
There you go. Yeah. And get yourself a canoe rod or canoe or rack paddle holder. That's what I was looking for. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the demo though. That's pretty good because now I gotta get my feather all back up to snuff there.
You go. Cool.
I worked there hard this year.
Excellent. Good.
Thanks very much. You want to stick around? Maybe you'll have some add.
I got home late. I've got some charcoal ready for dinner, so I'm gonna slip away now.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate
Thanks,
that. Fiona, great to see you pop in too.
Yeah, nice to see everybody.
See you later. Guys. Thanks, Mike. Talk soon.
Okay. See you.
There we go. That actually some good information on that. I was going to actually go back to the Badger Paddles episode to find out exactly how he does his maintenance. So for anybody who may have missed the Badger Paddles episode from last season, you can go back into our playlist from last season and give it a look. It was a really good show, actually. Really good show. Yeah. Okay, what are we going to talk about next? You started on sleeping bags, Kevin. Maybe we'll finish up with the sleeping bags and maybe transition into your sleeping mats or your air mattresses. So you mentioned about cleaning your sleeping bag and then tumble drying it with one of them balls or tennis ball or something like that there.
And when you're washing the bag too, open the zippers and loosen the toggles around the neck. So yeah, that's a good thing to do. But yeah, wash them. You can take them to I wouldn't take them to. I would go to a laundromat, but I wouldn't take them to what's the place where they wash stuff for you?
Oh, dry cleaners.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that because even though say please do this, you don't know. Don't do that. So yeah, a liner inside your sling bag for the winter, or sorry, for the summer is pretty good too, because that's easier to wash that than wash the bag. Eventually, it's going to smell, and sometimes we have to be proud of how bad we smell.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
The cool thing I'm doing right now, like the other day, I had some free time too, so I got all my stuff that I we're trying to finish. The rain jacket's the same thing. So I this thing I put water on it. It doesn't beat anymore, right? So it's Gore-Tex. So I threw it in the wash, and then I dried it again for 20 minutes after that. It rejuvenates it. So again, wash it, dry it. Well, wash it, rinse it, dry it, and then dry it for another 20 minutes after that, and that will bring that Gore-Tex thing back. The other thing I was doing though was stoves too. You mentioned stoves. So this is what I do to, you know, when I'm sitting here by myself, I, you know, got nothing else to do. So I got this little thing gadget here, and I connect.
I should have a disclaimer for those things.
So,
That's cool. I use one of them too, and I transfer fuel from one to the other. But they're
Okay, well, tell me about it, because I just got this. It's like about.
Well, they don't recommend you. We'll just say that it's not recommended you do those things, because it's a safety thing. But
You tell me this now?
that's okay. No, yeah, I do it
It's
too.
because people actually do blow themselves up. That's all.
Yeah.
Really?
If you're careful, you'll be okay. But
Yeah.
disclaimer.
You
Use it on
can't
risk.
just tell me this now. I had this for 3 weeks. I know. I've been doing.
No, carry on, man. I use it too.
What were you going to do with it, Kevin?
Yeah.
I'm not doing
Go ahead.
nothing with this now. Like, now you got me all worried.
Show everybody, Kevin. You got everybody intrigued.
You attach this onto here, and you attach this onto here, and of course, you know, this has got a little bit of fuel. This has got a little bit of fuel, so therefore it fills up the other fuel. So this is done, and this is full.
Yeah. So basically, that's a transfer device, right?
The
Yeah,
transfer
so
You just
valve,
got to
yeah.
make sure you're not putting too much fuel into the one you're filling. That's all, because they have limitations, right? I think they're filled 80% by volume, or 80% of their capacity. So you don't want to exceed that. I did. I'll tell you a story on why I like everybody to be very leery of these things. I do use mine, but I did fill. I did do that to one, and I put it in the garage, and I went out there the next day, and it had too much pressure in the bottom. You know, it's cupped on like this. It actually bulged downwards. So there was too much pressure built up inside of it.
Wait a minute, though. You left it on your, like, you walked away from it?
No. I transferred all the fuel. Then I stored the canister in my garage cupboard. And when I went to check it, I shouldn't be saying that. Maybe my insurance guy's watching, but it had bulged on the bottom. So then I transferred all the fuel out of that one into other ones.
Make mental note. Do not visit Dennis. Anyway, I've been doing this for 3 weeks, and I haven't had anything blow up yet. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, the other thing
the
I'm
one
doing.
we use for those 1 pound bottles of propane, like liquid propane.
Oh, I haven't done
There's
that
a
yet.
transfer valve for those too, where you can take the full size canister from your barbecue and refill the 1 pound. Wow, those are so dangerous, because you don't have any control over how much is going into the small one, and it will actually overpressurize. So you could actually blow the valve right out of the small one over time as it expands and contracts. It gets hot or gets cold, especially when you use it and they get that frost all over them. Those things, if they're not done right, wow, those are a bomb waiting to happen.
Thanks for the confirmation there, David.
Yes.
I know. Well, today I felt good about myself, but now I'm just anyway. The other thing I'm doing with my stoves, with especially my white gas stove, which you can't find, is somewhere here. I take it apart and I put cooking oil around the valves to make sure it's all nice and moist for the winter. I also take all the fuel out, and I refuel in the spring. You don't want fuel just sitting there, right? A couple of things too, like I count my tent pegs.
Yeah,
I know you're like, Kevin, what are you talking about? I want to know, because you're always losing tent peg. I take all my batteries out of my.
Kevin, you're getting way ahead of us, man.
I'm very hyper. I'm very hyper.
We're supposed to still be on sleeping bags.
Really? Well, sleeping bags, just wash them. We're
Okay.
good.
Okay.
Take your batteries out and either store them somewhere else or just flip them backwards because they might leak and get all that rusty, gooky, weird stuff through the winter. And you're like, oh my lord! So I'll do that. Don't keep them in those. Look at this! I was doing this tonight. Using this stuff for my axes. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a wax, which is like, oh god. Anyway, it's like a wax oil, and I oil it just like you guys were showing with the canoes and also the paddles. But make sure you get that right there because that's where the moisture is going to go, and it's going to crack your axe. Oh, is Evan there? Oh, Evan's there. Evan, don't break the axe.
Don't
Evan?
break the axe.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, on the tip as well, and you can use this here as well. Cool. I do that with my knives and stuff like that. And I broke my tarp this year on Georgian Bay. So here's a question for you guys because I don't know how to fix this. Dan, you might know. So this is a really good tarp. Dan Cook's custom sewing, but at the tip of it, the stitching opened up a bit. It was a massive storm. Like I don't know how this even survived the storm, but it just opened up a bit. So do I do this? Do I put that tape on it, or do I put glue on it, or do I buy a new tarp, or what?
Can you get it out to a seamstress that could restitch it?
Yeah.
That would be my first thing to go to is restitch it. Anytime you add, like, don't glue anything that's fabric if you don't want it to move.
Okay.
Because the glue will actually harden it up, and then it just gets brittle and will break, and it can actually tear the material away from the old material from where you glued it, and you have a much bigger hole. Whereas if it's just the stitching has let go, that's a pretty easy fix for anybody who's good at sewing, assuming you get the right thread.
What thread would you use then?
Depending on your material, I'd probably be using a waxed thread of some kind. I don't know specifics. Probably a polyester thread. I don't know. There's a million types. I know I've actually fixed in the field a cold crack on a canoe with Kevlar thread and a hand drill, and that actually worked remarkably well. But yeah, on a tarp, I definitely restitch it, and then if you need to, you can put the seam sealer on it. That'll close up the holes and help the fabric relax a little bit.
I've done that before too. Like I've got regular thread, and I've actually put wax on it. Would that work?
It can. It's hard to get the wax on evenly. That's all. It'll work, but it's just you never know. Like because cotton-based threads will rot, and they're done in a season, especially if they've gotten wet. Which is why I mentioned the wax.
There's good comments here. Like, what about dental floss? Would that work?
For a fix, sure. If you're just out in the field and you got to fix this now, yes, that'll do the job. But when you get home, you need to get it fixed properly.
Okay.
Obviously, yeah.
Obviously, they sew them when they're being produced, right? So you should be able to get it in there. If you have a good seamstress or somebody that knows what they're doing, they'll know the proper type of threading to use for that, anyways, right? Yeah,
Dennis, we don't call them seamstress anymore. We call them seamster people.
We'll go politically correct. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Pots.
Kevin, we're gonna get some order here. Hold on, because we got a lot to cover, and you're going all over the place because we got to get back to stoves actually, because there's a lot of different things you can do to maintain your stove and get it ready for rebuild. You mentioned oiling around the orifices and stuff. But in some cases, if you have an MSR stove, you might want to take that thing right apart as they recommend. You could always follow the manufacturer's recommendations. And if you take it right apart, you can replace parts that are breaking. On the pump, often you'll have to oil the cup on it or replace the pump cup, O-rings, perhaps maybe the jets themselves. There's ways of taking apart the hoses, and they have like a wire inside of them for cleaning out to get rid of debris. Rinsing out. You mentioned getting rid of old fuel. Have you seen the price of white gas of late? Go out in the forest and have yourself a nice coffee cookout and use the fuel. Don't dump it out or don't discard of it. A lot of stoves are made of like steels that will rust as well. You want to make sure that if you're storing it for a long period of time, maybe to hit it with a light coat of some sort of oil that is not dangerous if it burns. So like a cooking oil or a canola oil or something along that lines, just to give it that rust protection, right? Stick stoves and other stoves, a lot of times they're really full of soot. You want to clean that soot off, and help by oiling it. That's also going to help protect it and get it ready for the next season, right? Yeah.
Again, it's mostly the moisture that you're trying to get rid of when you clean them. Because any of the debris that sticks to it, the water wants to stick to the debris, and then that eats your metal. Even though the so-called wonder metals like titanium and things like that people say never rust, yeah, they corrode. Over time, it will corrode. You still, if you just look after them, clean them up really well at the end of the season or even mid-season, then they'll last you a lifetime. But if you don't look after them, you're going to get what you've not dealt with. It's pretty. O-rings, I hate them. I wish they come up with a better way to do that, because they always, the replacement is never the exact same size. It's always just a tiny bit bigger or just a tiny micron too small or whatever. And that's from the manufacturers. It drives me crazy. And I have like 4 stoves over time, and the O-rings go on them all the time because they get brittle and they dry out because I don't look after it well enough. And then you can't use the stove, and you got this great stove, but you can't run any fuel through it because it wants to explode.
Yeah, you have to be careful in those cases for sure. So, Kevin, right along that lines now, you were showing us a camp pot. Was that a camp pot?
Yeah. So, big debate. Do you wash this at the end of the year and scrub all the black off it, or do you keep the black on it? And, both have good. I mean, scrape it all off and make it nice and shiny. I don't. I keep it all black. First of all, because it looks good. It looks like you kind of know what you're doing. But the other, it retains heat more, the more dirty it is.
Yeah. I leave mine black. I like to leave my stuff black. My wife likes to scrub it when I get home. It's one of those things, right? But I prefer to leave it black. But I always carry a rag, and I keep it in my kitchen pot set. Like I always have like a general purpose rag when I'm canoeing, and I like to wipe the soot off, obviously, so that you're not getting soot all over everything, right? But yeah, there's another trick to stopping that from happening too, right?
Yeah, you put soap on the end, right?
Like a hard soap or like a dish soap?
Both. But I don't do that anymore. But the old days, I used to put soap around and then put it on there, and then it wouldn't go all black. But I just look because you're looking at me right now, and everybody's like, "Oh, look, that guy's an expert. He might scratch his boat up a lot and take it to Dan to get fixed up, but he knows how to cook in the wilderness."
Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
So yeah, but along the kitchen stuff, like what type of maintenance should we be doing for our kitchen stuff? You're talking about obviously give it a good cleaning and stuff like that, but a lot of times you want to check the handles on them, make sure the handles aren't going to fall off, or if you have a pot set that has like the handles screwed on, you want to make sure that the screws are tight and everything. What about trying to knock dents out of them?
Bang the dents out of it? Why would you bang a dent out of it?
I'm just that's what I'm asking. If you're one of them people that are like that, you might want to bang dents out, or a lot of times you'll have a frying pan that will warp. You want to try and flatten that out, otherwise all your eggs go to the outside of the pan. Right?
Dennis, are you a real camper or what? What's going on? Like,
I don't know. Or what about this, Kevin or Dan? Either one of you could pipe in on this one. a real popular pot set right now, or not pot set, but you can get pot sets, but frying pans are the Teflon coated ones. I think was it GSI or CGI or what is it? GSI, I think. They make
Yeah,
their frying
GSI.
pan, right? What about the Teflon coating on these things? Like eventually they start to chip and wear, but they're so popular, right?
Yeah, we have Teflon coated ones in our kitchen, and we stopped using them because the Teflon over time, as you say, it chips and it breaks if you don't use the correct utensils. Well, how many times have you been camping out and the only thing you have handy is a fork, and that's what you're using to stab stuff or stir things, and you're scraping the bottom. Teflon doesn't react well. It doesn't play nice with the human digestive system. It tends to build up, and I'm not a doctor. I'm not medical, so I won't go further than that. But I do know that it's not particularly good for you. Going back to what Kevin was saying, do I clean it or not? Is like my pots. If I clean them, I got to clean them all the way. Like I don't just sort of clean it up so it looks okay. And there's a few spots. If you're going to clean the black off, get all of it off. And that way you're starting from just the metal, and you can re-season the metal. And then that actually helps out a lot. If you're not going to clean it off, just like as you're saying, use that rag and just give it a wipe to get rid of any loose stuff. Yeah, that's how I look after those. I don't bang any dents out of my stuff unless it's a nesting set that's tight, because I still got to pack the thing away and I want it out of the way. I use a food barrel, and I put I have a kitchen box, so like a Wanigan type deal, and everything's got to fit in there. It's kind of like, everybody does their own version of Jenga on those things. So if you've got pots and things that are out of shape, they've been banged around too much and they won't nest, then you just get frustrated trying to get stuff put away as you're using it. So sometimes a little bit of judicious dent removal is a good thing. But most of the time, I agree with you, Kevin. I think if it looks beat up and banged up, it tends to make people think, hey, this guy maybe knows what they're doing out there. That looks like they've done something with this. It's total pride issue. It has nothing to do with reality, but
that's how you become a YouTube celebrity.
Yes,
Yeah.
there you go.
Beat up your gear and
just beat up your gear and make it look good. Yeah. I'm doing this now because it's the time of year. I soak everything in bleach. You could do vinegar as well, maybe vinegar and bleach or lime juice, whatever. But soak everything in the sink and get rid of all that grime in there that you think is clean. It's not, especially this. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Nalgene's are terrible.
Yeah.
I was going to say Nalgene's, and a lot of people don't know, if you ever break your Nalgene bottle, do not throw it away, man. Take a picture of it, go to the Nalgene website, and you will get a free replacement because these things are warranted for life and guaranteed not to break.
Really?
I seen Jim Baird broke one on one of his recent videos. And I just wanted to put in the comments, I hope you kept it because you'll get a free one.
I'll get a new one.
This one here actually is a replacement. I had dropped one, it broke all the way around, and I contacted them, and I had a new one in the mail within a week.
I had a past student that made a cabin out of Nalgene bottles.
That's expensive.
Yeah. It was like a log cabin, but all Nalgene bottles. It's cool.
Wow.
This is what we really need to talk about because this is what's going to be
water treatment. Yes, that was the next on the agenda here.
Cleaning this thing, it's disgusting. Okay, because again, all normal people, and we're not normal, especially Dan. Really, he's out of control. We get back from a trip and we're supposed to dry this stuff and we forget. So mold forms. Where does it form? Well, it forms inside here for sure. So right now you should be rinsing this out with soap, dish soap, and I use bleach and vinegar, whatever. But that's great. Rinse it out, whatever. I changed the filter. I just toss the filter and get a new one. You can clean it. I just toss it. But it's the hose. It's this thing. This is full of mold.
They are so hard to dry too, aren't they?
They're really hard to dry. Dry.
Yeah.
So what I do is I get a pipe cleaner, or everybody has paracord. I put first of all, I take these attachments off and I dry these because that's where mold will form as well. I take those off and dry them separately. But then I put a coat hanger through with a paracord on it, and I put a bunch of bleach in and I scrub it, and then I hang it to dry for like a good like all winter. So they'll dry out because that's where it's going to congregate, right? So do that.
Yep.
And Christy, my partner, is probably laughing because she knows I'm terrible at taking care of my gear. But the other thing I'm doing right now is I'm getting rid of my bear spray that's expired. This one, I just noticed, was expired in 2021. So thank goodness a bear didn't attack me. So I got a new one.
So will that not work anymore?
Well, you know,
Better to have an out-of-date one than none at all?
I probably will. Or just
It probably works, but they won't guarantee that the pressure is high enough to actually do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I do with my
It's a
expired
liability thing.
Yeah, well, I love when my expired ones. My buddy Andy and I will get together and we'll practice spraying, just so we know how to spray. In case I've never actually ever had to use this at a bear, but if I ever had, I went, oh, what am I doing? And of course the bear's. Ah.
Yep.
So so I practice with that. So yeah, get a new one.
Yeah,
Cool.
practice down like so that you're practicing it and it's going away from you downwind.
Make sure there's a big windstorm coming towards you,
Ooh.
Dan, and then
Yeah.
practice then. Yeah.
Coming towards you and then shoot it up high. Yeah.
Yes.
So
That's an
let's
excellent
focus
idea.
a little more on the water filters, because there's a lot of different water filter systems out there. You've got the MSR and the Canodyne pump type systems that have cartridges within them, usually a ceramic or a paper filter system. There's ways like, you want to make sure you dry them, but they recommend that you actually use like a cap full of bleach and sort of like a gallon of water, and you pump that whole thing through there to sort of sanitize your thing. But after you've done that, you want to also rinse it by pumping some fresh water through as well, right? So by doing that there, you're going to rinse that out, get rid of any bad taste that might be in there. Check your MSR filters because they do come with a gauge. Have you ever seen that little C gauge? A lot of people don't know what it is on their cap and what it's for, but it's actually, if it fits over the circumference of the filter, it's time to replace that ceramic filter, right? So you want to make sure that you're on top of that so that you're protected that way. And then take those things right apart. I mean, right apart, and leave them on the kitchen counter for a week and let them dry right out, and then store them in a dry spot, maybe with one of these things here, right? So that
I used to take those apart and after a trip, and every trip, because you know I'm dealing with kids, I take the filters all apart. I do similar to Kevin and clean out the hose and take everything that can come apart without breaking it. I take it apart. They all get soaked in bleach and water, and then I run the system with bleach and water. And as you say, rinse it out with fresh water after that. And then all over my office was bits and pieces on every shelf, hanging off of things like books, holding it all into place. And it was just like people would walk into my office and go, what exploded in here? And it's like it's just drying stuff out, because it's like if you don't dry it out, you might as well not have bothered.
My MSR system, I actually store it in pieces. I got a little mesh sack that it comes in, or that like they give you when you buy it. I actually store all the pieces in there, and I store it in a disassembled state. Right now, Kevin just showed the Canodyne, which seems to be those there, and those the Sawyer systems seem to be so popular nowadays. The filter, can you take the filter off there, Kevin? That top part is actually replaceable. They're usually $29 to $30 or $25 to $30 on Amazon, or go to your local outdoor shop, like Algonquin Outfitters or something, and you could actually purchase the new filters. But don't throw the old one away. I always carry two of these things on a trip, just the filter. I have the bag, but you can't get it undone, can you? You need to start working out, sir.
I'm fine. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. But yeah. one second. Okay. No pressure.
Yes.
Anyways, take us for our work. Yeah, that filter does come off, and they are replaceable. There we go.
There we go.
So now these here, they recommend you clean them by swoosh them in water and stuff like that. Secret, I carry a large syringe into the backcountry like they do with the Sawyer systems, and I'll mildly backwash them things and enhance the performance of them after they start getting hard to work. But Same thing at home. If you're going to store these things, if you backwash a little bit of, just clean water through it, it's amazing how much more life you'll actually give these Catadyne systems. And there again, take it apart, let it dry right out on the counter with the bag, right?
All the Gravity Works ones, that's how when you're in the field, that's how you just do a real quick maintenance of them. When you're done pumping a decent amount of water through, you put your clean bag up higher than your dirty bag and just rinse it back through. It does the same thing. And then dump that out before you fill it up again. Get rid of the debris.
The other thing I'm doing right now, and this is really important to talk about, is packing your first aid kit. What happened was I thought I was done for the season, and I was out with my students last week, and I always have the first aid kit, and the main instructor got stung 9 times by a wasp because it was in his shirt, like boom, 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 boom. And I said, "Are you allergic?" "Yes." I went, "Oh my God, do you have an EpiPen?" "Yes." So I was also looking for Benadryl and everything else, but I was out. I'm completely out of my first aid kit because I had used that for the summer, thinking that I didn't need that anymore. Well, because I'm an idiot. Anyway, he was fine. And I actually had some of my vehicles where it was fine. But just take this apart and redo your meds, redo your even your nausea pills, whatever. Just get new stuff. I would wait till the spring to do that, to be quite honest. I wouldn't do that in the fall, but just take all the stuff out and redo that. Oh, boots. Like, oh my, actually that is disgusting. Oh God. Okay.
You're a brave man, Kevin.
So don't put these in the wash machine. Just do it in a basin. Rinse them out. Leather boots, get that waterproofing on there afterwards. But if they're like a Gore-Tex, whatever, just wash it. Get a toothbrush, an old toothbrush. Don't use the toothbrush and then put it back and use it as whatever. Brush it out, and then take the liner out and wash the liners in the wash machine inside, or just get new ones. For me personally, I just get new ones because that's disgusting.
Check your laces too for wear.
Laces.
Nothing worse than a lace snapping on you while you're trying to tie it.
Take all this stuff out of your pack. The bug spray, don't leave it in your pack because this will go off and it will smell disgusting in the spring. So get all that out, your sunscreen, your bug spray, whatever, and just don't keep it stored in your pack because it's going to stink.
Where's the best place to store it? Don't leave it in your cold garage or
leave it at Dennis's house. I'll give you his address after the show.
You know what? I'll take all the free bug spray, sure.
That stuff's worth
You
gold.
got connections, Kevin, with Ben's. Yeah. You could always send me over a couple cases of that stuff.
Yes, I could. I know people.
Okay, I want to talk about sleeping pads. Sleeping pads are another thing that are sort of like the sleeping bags in your tent. These things, you do not want to store these while they're in a rolled up compressed state. Best way to store these: open them up, let them breathe, right?
Let them dry out. Because so many people, if they don't have an enclosed pump, so many people are blowing on them to get that little bit of extra pressure in there. Well, that condensation coming out of your breath is in there now, growing, and it's a cool, wet, dark place. It's perfect for mold. Having it hang up as best with the valve down so air can get in and out, and it'll dry it right out over the however long you're able to leave it hanging up. That's the best way to do it. It's just let it hang open, and especially the self-inflators, because that's just full of all that fibers that want to open, and it needs to dry out. But you've got essentially a little bubble wand on every fiber. So all of those need to dry.
So I tend to leave mine open and I let them inflate because all my air mattresses are self-inflating, and I'll put them behind my couch down here in the basement. And they slide right down there. They're perfect, right? Nobody's going to be smushing with them or doing anything that shouldn't be done on them, right? And they're just going to sit there and be nice and fresh for next season. Yeah, and you want to, if you're one of the people that are sleeping on your pads and you find that the thing keeps deflating on you, well, you might want to try and find your leak, get it patched up proper. If it's something you can't patch, get yourself a new one. Because they're cheap.
Oh my Lord! What are you talking about?
Kevin, you showed your axe. There's a lot of maintenance for our sharps as well, and
Show my what?
your axe.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Show us your axe, Kevin.
Right. I got a bunch of axes. Oh, this is a new one. This is my new one. Well, not new, but yeah.
So with an axe, I guess this is the time you have all winter actually to play around with these things. You know, you want to inspect the axe head or your knife. You want to make sure that there's any nicks or nothing, little chunks taken out of it. And it's a time that you're going to fine tune these things. And with your axe, you're going to moisturize your handle. Show them oil. What oils do you use for that again?
I use these two things. I gotta say, my buddy Tim Foley at Canoe Outdoor Equipment. I just wait till we go winter camping, then he fixes everything for me. Because he knows what he's doing. But he uses this. So yeah, so I rub the wood with that, especially the top and the bottom. It's a oil wax mix, and that is what you can use. But also for the metal, there's a spray you can get. You spray it on, but you can use cooking oil. It doesn't matter. Just moisturize it for the winter so it doesn't rust. Even though you're saying, well, it can't rust. I'm just putting it in my storage. It could rust. So
you have the worst culprit for that sitting on it right now. The axe mask. Take them off. Do not store them with the axe mask because the leather holds moisture and will cause your blade to rust. So it's best to store that.
Wait, you're not supposed to keep this on?
No.
Not while it's in storage.
Even a knife, if you have a like a bushcraft knife in a leather sheath, you should always remove the blade. If it's a high carbon steel, you should always remove it from the leather because the leather can cause it to rust. If it's a carbon steel.
Do you guys actually go on trips or do you just store stuff all year?
If you got stainless steel, you don't have to worry. If it's a stainless steel blade, you don't have to worry about it. But if it's a carbon steel blade, carbon steel blade will tend to rust inside of a leather sheath. Stainless steel.
The leather sheaths, particularly. The outside of a leather sheath is going to get a lot of coating. Inside, they tend to leave it. It doesn't get treated as well, or it gets treated once at the factory when it's made and never touched again. And that's where the blade is in contact with it. So the moisture builds up in there, and it does get on there. Like I have a diving knife that I keep on my life jacket, and this sucker is invincible. It's wet nonstop, but it's a hard plastic cover that dries it right out. So
but also that's probably not a high carbon steel. High carbon steel will tend to rust like that, right? Whereas stainless steel that looks like a stainless steel blade you have there, Kevin.
Stainless built, yes. Yeah, whereas Kevin's there, you can see the shine on it, and you can see the grain in the metal. That's going to be a high carbon that holds its edge real nice, which is really sought after. That's a nice blade, actually.
Yeah, so I do sharpen I'm not really good at it. Tim is trying to teach me because it is a running joke. He sharpens all my stuff in the wintertime, but this had a chunk in it. One of my students borrowed it to take a tooth out of a moose jaw, and I actually was able to sharpen it down. But when I sharpen them, I use my dad always taught me this. It's the stone, but you spit on the stone, right? And you do that. But for this one, I had to get that sharpener that's right in. You put two nails into a log, and then you just sharpen it that way. Right. You guys know more about this than I do. But that's what I do to get it down to a good sharpen.
I carry with me, like when I go tripping, I always carry it's a two-sided diamond sharpener, but it's only about 4 inches long. And it folds, like it's got folding handles that come out. It's got a coarse side, it's got the fine side, and then I also carry a small piece of leather for a strop. Yeah. And you know what? If in the wintertime, that's how I learned how to sharpen my knives, is just sitting there in the wintertime, not doing nothing in front of the TV. I'll get that thing and I'll just fine tune my knives, and then I'll pull out the leather strop and I'll do 20 on one side, 20 on the other, 19, because I have nothing else to do. And before you know it, you could shave with your bushcraft knife or your camp knife, right? So Having a sharp tool. What's the saying? If you dull tools are a
Dull
dangerous
tool is a
tool.
dangerous tool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. But also used tools. Like for example, here's a neck knife I use all the time. So you can tell. And again, I do not take care of my stuff the way I should, but I do take care of my stuff. So look at the leather. So I've waxed and oiled that wet leather for sure, right? And there's the blade, and not too bad. But then here's a knife I haven't used yet. Look at the difference, right? Look at blah, blah, blah. Okay. Look at the wood, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I got this for my daughter and she never used it. So,
Nice knife.
yeah, it is a nice knife, but you can tell I haven't taken care of it. This knife has been used for like dozens of years. So look at the difference of the material, right? Yeah. Oh no, we've become a bushcraft show.
You know what? We because we got going here. I didn't take my 8 o'clock commitment break, and I apologize to my channel supporters and sponsors, but we'll get it next time. But Tim's got to go pee, so everybody hold on. Tim's got to go pee, and I think Linda does too. So now everybody has to go pee. But Kevin, it's your fault.
You know, I was wondering at 8 o'clock. I was like, I have to pee. Well, what's going on? And you kept going on and on. You're worse than I am.
Dude, it's a good show. Okay, so yeah, your sharp tools, make sure you take care of them. Get them all tuned up and ready to go. What are you going to show us now, Kevin?
All right, barrels. I think this is really important to talk about because you use this all year with your food in there. Bleach or use vinegar. I use vinegar more than bleach. And wash it really well, because honest, you forget about what's in there all summer. Wash it out because it will stink and rot and mold like you wouldn't believe. You know, you might, well, no, Kevin, no, wash this out. And then I find it dries quicker if you hold it upside down and put on a dryer. So yeah, do that.
I also store mine. I'll keep a box of baking soda in it.
Yes, baking soda is great. It takes away the odor. Yeah.
So if there's any odors, if you've had any particular type of foods in there, like salamis and stuff like that, they tend to leave odor, right? So
speaking of that too, what I wanted to cover too is I've got 2 bags of dehydrated food that I haven't. So I dehydrate my own meals, not all the time, whatever. But yeah, I've got stuff left because I made too much. So what do you do with it? In theory, this could be in my kitchen in a bag, and it should be fine until the apocalypse happens and zombies come and get us 10 years from now. But you can put this in the freezer, and it will extend the length of it. Just make sure it's sealed as well. But also what I'm doing, because I have no life, is I'm getting all my old Ziplocs from the summer, and I'm washing and drying them for next year.
Yeah, or we can come over to your place and have a big smorgasbord, right?
I've been doing, you know what? There's nights when I get home really late from work and I just can't meal. Don't tell anybody. I'm very lonely.
Christine's in the chat.
She knows I've done that. The OMG meals, when I got a box of them for a review I was doing for Explore Magazine.
OTG, not OMG. Oh my God, meals. It's.
Oh, really? Okay. Those meals, they're really good meals.
Meal.
I got to say, there's a couple of times this summer where I was like, that's what I'm having for dinner tonight.
Yep. Hey, and they're good meals. They're good to do that with.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be glad when Randy's back to making them again. You mentioned electronics.
Yeah.
Kevin. That's something that I got on the list here. Let's go over electronics and what should we be doing to safeguard these and keep them safe for next season.
Yeah, so I take all my batteries out. First thing, I take all my batteries out and put them in a bag for the winter. Because many times the batteries have leaked and then destroy whatever we have. Mm-hmm. So, but you don't have to do that. You just flip them so they don't leak and they don't waste. Like all of a sudden you have a flashlight that turns on in February in your storage and then stays on. That's okay. You just change the battery. But I would just take them out and store them so that they don't leak in that. Also,
now, some devices don't have batteries you can remove. A lot of them are rechargeable devices. So the best thing for that is to keep them topped up, right?
Yes.
I would think.
Yeah.
My Garmin, I can't remove the batteries. My headlamp is rechargeable. I can't remove the batteries without taking the thing apart and doing what I'm not supposed to do to it. My battery packs, your little brick that you would take back into the back country to charge. You got to keep those things charged up, right? You got to make sure they're topped up full, because like any other battery, they'll discharge over time, go from 100% down to 80%, 70% over the long winter season. You want to make sure you top them up. Maybe once a month, just go throw them on a charger, get them all charged up. Solar chargers. What do you do with those, right? A lot of times they get all scratched up. How can you? Is there a way of making the solar charger surface clean again, or just clean it up?
Depending on what the panel is made of, the solar panel, if it's a cheap plastic that's supposed to be clear, those actually do polish up pretty nicely if you use a really mild abrasive. You can like stuff you'd use on your silverware would be great on that. Vinegar and ketchup actually is something you can use if you really need some abrasive on it. A tiny little smidgen of baking powder is just enough that will, but you got to be careful on plastics because it'll scratch it. If it's a glass or a higher tech material, you need to follow the manufacturer, obviously. But I've used the vinegar and ketchup to clean that up, buff it and polish it with a really good microfiber towel, because it digs in and gets all those little granules out of the scratches and the grooves that naturally happen from just using the thing. You got to clean all those out, and don't wax it, because the wax will cloud over time, and then it diminishes the effectiveness of the panel. And this is if you got those little tiny ones. Polish up the fries. That's the best way to deal with it. But absolutely. Ketchup has a bit of vinegar in it, and the tomato is also a bit acidic. That's why ketchup. But yes.
There you go. What? I didn't know that, but you can buy kits that you can use to restore your headlights on a vehicle, right?
Yeah.
And all they are just mild abrasives, I guess, to sort of polish the surface back. So yeah, I never really thought of that. That's a great idea, Dan. Thanks.
Yeah,
that's awesome. What about
Dennis? I have here that people are asking me continuously about this is wool, right? So so the idea of washing wool. So this is merino wool. This is like wool power, but it's a blend. It's got polyester and it's a polyester and then merino wool. You can wash this. I don't really wash it a lot. And again, Christine's going to be watching this and say, Kevin, you should be washing your stuff. You stink all the time. Anyway, but the idea is merino wool, it battles against bacteria, against your smell. In World War I, they would wear it in the trenches because you didn't have to wash it. But this is, I just got this about a month ago, and I just love it. Ivanhoe, it's a 100% wool, 100%. So this is a blend, which I like. This is 100%. Not too itchy. This is not an issue at all. But they say if you're going to wash this, wash it in cold water and then hang it. Don't dry it. You can wash this in anything, and it won't be a problem, right? But if you wash this in warm water and dry it, it will shrink and destroy it. I would say, and again, a debatable thing, and Christine, so sorry if you're still listening, but I'm never going to wash this sweater. Never is going to be washed, okay? Because it goes against the bacteria. I will wear it all day and I won't smell it. And I hang it up, air it out, and wear it again the next day. That's why I love 100% wool, because of that. So taking care of things like that, if I wash this every week or every time I wore it, don't buy it if you're going to do that.
Yeah. Just don't ever wear that on date night, Kevin.
Oh, I'd be 6 years with just the scent of me.
Let's see here. Okay, and other things. So if you're talking about clothing, a lot of us have clothing that we wear for our regimented trips, right? We get out there and we have the outdoorsy pants and the outdoorsy shirts, the Columbia fishing shirts and the cool hats like Kevin has here and stuff, right? So I guess it's a good time to go through your clothing. A lot of stuff is actually waxed, right? You might want to take this time to get your Fjall Ravens all waxed up, standing in a corner on their own. Checking the zippers, the pockets, making sure the seams are all there still. My Fjall Ravens pockets are coming apart on them. That's manufacturer stuff, right? But making sure you get all this stuff all fixed up. Do you have a hole in the knees of your favorite pants? What are you going to do? You going to patch them? You going to buy new ones? What would you do, Kevin?
Well, Raven pants, I believe in that wax. I thought it was a kind of a gimmick when I first bought them. The idea of you wax them and melt it on there.
Yeah, Greenland wax.
Yeah, it really does work, but you got to keep doing it. So yeah, make sure you do that. Yeah. For my clothes, I have a certain what I call the uniform. I have certain clothes I use for my camping, and then for my other stuff, right? And I always put those in a separate bag, in a loose bag, and I do wash them. I don't wash them a lot because the one shirt I love, if I keep washing, it's going to fall apart. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. But yeah, I don't wear my camping clothes around the house. Actually, I already did that. I've already packed my summer camping clothes upstairs, and they're all stored. So yeah, just don't wash it a lot. You probably all disagreeing with me, but I just don't.
It depends what it is too, though. It depends what it is, right? Like, if you got cotton shirts,
underwear and my socks. Shirts, right? Yeah, obviously my underwear and my socks I wash. Yeah. Twice every couple of years.
But the underwear every 4 days, right? Inside, outside, back and forth.
Who's ever? I'll ask people this: who's ever gone on a really long trip and on the end of the trip, literally has tossed their underwears and socks and not even thought of washing them? We're like, nope,
or burned them.
Yeah,
burned them.
You're done.
Yeah. The other things that fall in clothing too are you already mentioned the Gore-Tex jackets, but not everybody could afford Gore-Tex like Kevin Callan can. But you know what? So a lot of us have just regular rain jackets, the Columbias or whatever it might be. But what about re-waterproofing them? Is that a feasible thing to do to respray waterproofing on a jacket like that, or do you have a remedy for that? Anybody?
I've never had good experience because I totally cheap out in my own personal gear. If I got stuff for a group, I buy whatever is the best that I can afford. But for my personal gear, I usually get the cheapest thing I can find at the the discount store. So like my rain jackets are, well, they're not quite the ponchos that you pull over, but they're not much better. So I've never had any luck re-waterproofing those. The rest of my clothes, I'm pretty. I've recently gotten into buying some more technical clothes, and I've noticed the difference that if I don't wash them a lot, I just keep them clean. Like if they actually get dirty, like dirt on them, or I'm sweaty in them, then yeah. But the technical clothes tend to work really, really well. But don't wash them all the time like you do your everyday clothes. I think that just eats away at them. My motorcycle gear is a different animal altogether. But it's the same thing when I go for like my life jacket, stuff like that. Like, do you clean those? Like, I never wash one, but I'll take it out with a tub of soapy water once a year and just sort of scrub the worst stains off. Good chance just to check it over, make sure everything's okay with it. Clean my whatever wrappers I got still in my pocket because I forgot to clean it out because it's just, they're still in there. Yeah, there's a granola bar. But it's like, yeah. And we haven't mentioned it yet. Like part of our safety gear and stuff, we're supposed to have a whistle with us while we're doing it. How many people actually clean these things?
I do. I clean my whistle.
It's really important to clean because you're sticking it in your gob. You got to get that clean.
Sticking it in your gob. Yeah, or test it and make sure it still works. Make sure it's a good Fox 40, right?
Yeah, make sure you've got a Fox 40 and you test it at about 11:30 at night just to make sure everybody knows you're still in the house.
Right next to your buddy sitting by the campfire.
Also, Dan, what I do in the fall to rinse everything out, I go on a whitewater trip. One, I can't control. I do class 5, and I
Make
dump.
sure you swim a lot. Yes.
Yeah, I swim a lot, and then I'm done for the year. I'm good. I'm all cleaned up.
Yeah.
Cool. So everybody's seen I just had a ticker going across the bottom. If anybody has any last questions here before we're ready to wrap up the show, put them now. Then we'll try to cover them really quick. We can go into a bit of overtime tonight because we have covered a lot. There are still a few things here that I got on my list that I'd like to chat about. One is something that nobody ever thinks of: your camp chairs. Everybody's getting these nice new little Fandangle camp chairs, the lightweight ones that you bring out. They're shock corded type of thing. Things that you might want to check on them. The plastic always breaks at the legs, right? Like where the legs plug into them. So you might want to check and see, is it starting to show any hairline cracks in there or something? Can you get replacement parts for them? If you do, now's the time that you want to try and get those replacement parts. You might want to check the shock cords, just like you would on your tent poles as well, making sure that the shock cords are all in good shape, because they can wear over time. Have you ever seen the shock cords? If when they're old, they get like the fibers inside break, but the outer is good, and it gets really skinny, like you're stretching a worm. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Might be a good time to change up the shock cords in them. Get that all taken care of. Is the pouches where the poles going on the back, are they still intact? Are they starting to rip? So you might want to make all your repairs on your chairs and store them already fixed up, right? Kevin, you got that look.
I'm just laughing because I did something terrible this year. I feel guilty about it. But so I took the Ray Goodwin and his family on a canoe trip, and they were here, and we're all getting ready for the trip, and they didn't bring camp. Well, they flew here, so they on camp chairs. So I knew one camp chair was broken. I knew it. The little cup things at the leg that holds it up from the sand. Well, it was broke. I gave it to Ray. Here you go. Here's a camp chair for you. I got mine, and I made sure mine was perfect. And yeah, he was cursing that camp chair the whole trip and blah 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 blah. It's like, I don't know. I checked it. I do gear maintenance all the time of my gear. I don't know what happened.
Anybody who knows you knows that's not true.
Ray, he's in the chat. You know that, eh, Kevin?
He was always sitting like this. If you watch the film, he's always sitting like this. If you want to know why, it's because it was broken.
Yeah. Backpacks. We haven't talked about backpacks. These things, like mine, Big Red, we put these things through hell, 50, 60, 70 pounds of gear, all our good clean stuff, all our wet stuff. There's different types. You have fabric, you have your canvas, and then you have your your Eureka style that are like the old seal line bags. What should we be doing to these things to get them ready for the off season?
Yeah. So my inner bag for so this I use a nylon bag, and then I use this waterproof bag to go inside of it. So this time of year, I'll put it in a bin. Again, you can wash this in the washing machine for sure, but I'll just put it in a bin and rinse it. Or wash it with soap and then rinse it and then dry it. And then look at the seams. This I don't think will ever leak, but you need that to be waterproof. Like you can't have something that's keeping your stuff waterproof. The other thing, as well as my map, I did the same thing with my map case. Open it up, take everything out, and then leave it open. And I get an egg beater, and I put the egg beater in there to keep it open all winter to aerate it. So it's not like sitting like this, closed all winter, right? So
an egg beater in particular, it has to be an egg beater.
Well, I use an egg beater.
Okay.
You can use other things. You can use Dan's attitude to keep it wide open because he's got a long stance of attitude.
Yes, that will help dramatically.
So if you have like an old Duluth bag or something, those are made of like a canvas, are they not? A Duluth pack?
Yeah. I use
you're not going to wash that, but you could actually wax those or reseal them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I've re-waxed those. They get heavier once you do that, but you should do that.
Okay, and what about storing them? I'm going to tell everybody a little bit of a story about a pack that I had one time that I never hung. I threw it in a corner, and it for some reason, this is before I was married and stuff. I threw it in the corner of the bedroom, and for some reason, it started growing mold in behind it. It was like it was a dead zone under there, like air. So make sure you hang them up. My point, make sure you hang your packs up and hang them in an open state too, so that they too can air out, right?
Yeah, I've switched over a lot to the waterproof bags, the seal line type bags, just because
Yeah.
they're just a lot easier to handle and they float really, really well. So I'm not chasing. It's easy to see a bright yellow pack going down a river, so it's a little easier to catch them. But yeah, when you get home, you clean them all out. Make sure check your seams and the straps where they attach to the bag.
Stitching.
They chafe, and over time the threads and the stitching can wear out, so it's a good time to check those over. I've restitched some of those, just to double stitched right over top of what was there and use the same hole. And my wife's looking at me like I'm a total moron, like what am I doing? But it saved the pack and I didn't have to buy a new one. So it was like, they do break down over time. There is a lifespan for them, especially the new synthetic materials. They do only last for a certain amount of time, where they're actually functioning properly. I've had a Duluth bag in the past where I had that thing for 30 years, and I think I waxed it once. That bag was bulletproof until I loaned it to somebody, and then it's gone. It just they lost it. It sank, but it wasn't my gear, thankfully. They lost their tent, not mine. But it was, some of the newer ones they do have a lifespan, and you just have to be aware of that. My question is, how do we deal with this gear that we're no longer using? Maybe it's worn out, but has a bit of life to it. What do we do with that?
It's funny you say that, because perfect segue, man. I got that right here. Yes.
I'll tell you what I do.
Go for it.
So Project Canoe, Canoe Outlook, and all those camps, you just give them the gear. And there's a lot of companies. I know King Outdoor Equipment. Tim asked me the other day, he goes, Kevin, we got this stuff that we can't sell anymore. Where do I it's not going to the landfill. Give it to them. And if they don't want it, they'll tell you, but give it away. Probably better than a garage sale, because you know where it's going. It's going to a good camp, taking youth out. That whatever. That's what I do. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. There's a few things you could do with unneeded gear, right? You can repurpose it. You could sell it on Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace. You could give it to a friend who's just starting out, or as Kevin mentions, you can donate it to a cause. You might be surprised that some of the gear that you may have doubles, triples, quadruples of. If you really sit back and you take a look, a lot of us are gearheads, and I have so much gear downstairs that I have it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be used. You can have 10 pot sets, you could have 10 different sleeping bags and sleeping mats and stuff like that. Think of one of your local charities, Salvation Army, or local, not to a place that would resell it, but a place that would actually repurpose it to, say, for instance, somebody who might be homeless and need in need of blankets or sleeping bags. These are great things that you can reutilize, and you know what? It kind of gives you a warm, fuzzy spot in your heart there, knowing that you've actually given it to a good cause. But that's there's a lot of things you can do with it, rather than just in your basement. Or
Dennis, you rent it out for whiskey.
Rent it out for whiskey. Yeah.
So this sounds silly, but I do this a lot. So I'd rather have gear being used than just sitting here. And I have a lot of stuff. For example, hot tents. I have 5 hot tents. Where if I go out, I'm going to use one, right? Yeah. So not everybody. So don't everybody contact me right away, whatever. But I know certain people that actually will say, Kevin, I can't afford a hot tent, and they're hard to rent in some places. Some places you can do that. I went, look, I want you to go out. So a lot of my past students will just come out up the laneway, canoes, packs, backpacking packs I just gave just the other day, just past students of mine. They're going on their very first trip. They can't afford that stuff. They know me, and I said, look, I got this stuff. Use it. I'd rather you use it. And then hot tents, actually 2 are going out this weekend to friends of mine because they can't afford to get it. and I don't ask, but I somewhat will receive a bottle of good scotch for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The old thank you, right?
The old thank you.
The
I go
old
like
thank
this. I go, here's the 10. And then
Okay.
I get a bottle of scotch.
We're at 10 after 9. Let's go till 2:30.
Oh my Lord.
Or, 2 hours and 30 minutes. We'll go till 9:30 here. We did have Donald Dakota asking, what about fishing gear, reels, lines, etc.? Anybody want to touch on that? Kevin, you just had a great big fishing tournament. You know all about fishing.
So I was going to get Dan to answer this because I have to get
I
a
have no idea. I'm not.
Yeah.
I love fishing, but I've never been a huge fish eater. So it's like I always catch and release. So I don't even have a lot of gear anymore. It's like so I'm not a good person, and most of my gear sits in the corner until I need it, and then I struggle to put it back together because it's so wrecked.
I will share a couple things that I know of. First off, rod and reels. You might want to check all your rods to make sure that the eyes are all in good shape. Sometimes eye inserts will pop out, and that might be a good reason to replace that eye or move on to another fishing rod. You also want to check and make sure that there's no cracks in the rod, especially at the tip, where especially when you're going into the backcountry. I would say a good time to change your fishing line would be in the spring, so it's fresh. Some fishing lines retain a memory, and if they sit all winter, you go to cast, you're going to end up with this big bird's nest because it's all just going to want to remain in that a coiled state that it's in, whether it's on a we call it spinning rod. Bait casters, not so much because of the way the spools are spooled and they're casting straight out as opposed to uncoiling, right? Your fishing tackle, good time to go through, get rid of the crap that doesn't catch you anything. But no, you know what? In all reality, you want to store it in a dry place. You want to make sure that your hooks aren't going to rust. So don't keep it in the garage. Put it someplace in a dry area so that your hooks don't rust. And believe it or not, clean your lures, especially if you store with lead split shots and stuff like that, because a lot of times it gets that powdery coating on it. And for some reason, it just seems to transfer all through your tackle box, whether it's one of those little trays or a big one. But you want to make sure that you clean your tackle as well. If you have a lot of rubber baits, check them. Make sure they're not dried out. Some of them, like some certain ones, they retain moisture, and if you leave them out exposed to air, they'll just go hard and crispy, and you can't bring them back. I think that's gulp. Those gulp baits, those things will dry up hard, right? So, yeah, just basically, it's all about storing them in the right conditions and maintaining the stuff. If you have reels, if they require lubrication, you might want to lubricate the bearings. Take it apart, clean the inside of the housing, because a lot of people will go camping, they'll leave their fishing rods sitting out leaning against a tree, pours rain out, gets sand, grime, dust, dirt inside of it. You want to make sure you clean it, because fishing rods and reels are not cheap, right?
I'll put Vaseline in my reel. And you're right. I don't change my line until the spring. It's just a thing I do. But also, Dennis, I completely wash all my camping stuff because it smells like fish, because that's what I did all summer is I caught fish. I hope Pine Martin's listening. I have to wash all my stuff. It smells so bad of fish because that's all I did. More fish. It's just caught them all. It was sorry.
Yep. Cool. And I think one of the last things I want to touch on, unless you could think of something that we may have missed, because I know we covered a heck of a lot. Something that people will never ever consider when it comes to storage is your canoe transportation, roof racks, trailers. A lot of people have roof rack systems on their vehicles. You might want to, if they're removable, you might want to take them off so that they're not subjected to, the grime of winter. All that salt can be pretty detrimental when it comes to hitting, exposed aluminum. That might be your cross rails on the roof and stuff like that. Checking the rubber footings on them, the strapping, all your ratchet straps or your tension straps, making sure you're not showing fraying on them or any cut parts, because the last thing you want is your canoe flying down the street or into the cars behind you. trailers, you know what? Check your axles and your bearing and your grease and all that stuff, making sure your tires are in good shape, because tires on a trailer have generally about a 5-year lifespan, right? Before you should be replacing them. They'll start to crack on the sidewalls, and your tire pressures will, run amok on you. So you want to make sure you take care of all that stuff. And, a lot of that can be done in the springtime too, or now while you're thinking about it, right?
Yeah, I've rebuilt a couple of canoe trailers, and yeah, you gotta stay on top of some of the maintenance on those, and it saves so much. I've gotten trailers where they're given to me, and I fix them all up and put new wood floors in and get rid of all the rusted out crap and paint everything with the rust paint, and it just saves so much. Just to look after that. If it needs a bit of paint, give it some paint specific to the metal, and that it'll save a lot. And it looks nice. It looks good as you're rolling down. Maybe somebody actually does want to steal it when you leave it in the lot.
Yep. Yeah, Mustang 774 hit on a good one too. And something I didn't think about is, if you have any freeze dried meal for that point, you might want to check the expiry dates on them and eat them up before they expire. Mind you, most of these things carry expiry dates of like 25 years down the road, right? I don't think I have any meals downstairs that I've ever had that long. But yeah, definitely check out, and especially your dehydrated meals, right? Make sure you're storing those things in a nice, cool, dark location, and you might want to freshen up that supply. Kevin, what did you do with all your stuff? You said
I put it in the freezer, just to. You don't have to, but I just extends it. That's all. I did a whole bunch of dehydrated limes this year for my drink. That's what I put in my drink, and I got too many of them. So in theory, they can still be in my kitchen, not an issue. But really good sealed bag in the freezer. Yeah. The other thing too. What did I do? Your grill. Wash that, because that's disgusting.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you carry a grill, sure. Yeah.
Well, I do carry a grill. Yeah. Well, because you know what? When you're in Algonquin, you can never find a grill. Every campsite you go to, there's no grills at all.
No, never a grill. Never a grill.
Yeah,
and people are afraid to throw their meat right on the coals, right?
So. I don't do that. People pee on the grill. No, don't do that. No.
Well, that's awesome. You know what? I think we pretty much covered
awesome.
a really good a good array of things here. I everything's crossed off on my list, man. We're good. We're good.
Well, thank goodness, because honest to the Lord, this is a long night. All right.
Yeah.
You had no break. We couldn't pee. I couldn't get a refreshment. I'm still drinking whatever. It was hell tonight. If it wasn't for Dan being so knowledgeable.
My fault.
No, it wasn't. Actually, Dan, you were amazing, actually. And actually, also, I'm so glad Mike joined us and Fiona. And I'm actually really glad that you joined, Dan. You're a very knowledgeable person. I've met you a couple of times at the shop. And you're a saving grace for canoes. And let's just say that I can talk about maintenance, or I can just give it to Dan.
There you go. You stick to what you're good at, Kevin, writing, and Dan can take care of the maintenance part, right?
Hey, I'm fair deal. Just shoot me a book every once in a while, eh?
I will.
Well, Dan, thanks very much for joining us tonight, man, and participating in this. It was really cool meeting you there in person when I come down and picked up my Bob Special, which is an awesome canoe. And your segment, I'm not sure if you even watched the video, but
I did.
You have a good cameo in there. Yeah,
nice.
So, yeah. But yeah, so thanks very much. Say hi to the crew over there at Novacraft.
I will. I saw Steve checked in earlier. I don't know if Steve stuck out the whole episode, but he was on there. So that was very cool to see.
Good stuff. Steve, Sarah, Chris, tell them all I say hi.
Yep.
And the whole crew back there in Novacraft, you guys do a great job. Keep it up.
Well, thanks.
Thanks, man. We'll see you in the green room.
You betcha.
Kevin, thanks very much, man. As usual, you shine where you shine best.
Yes, it's like knowledge. Kevin, I got to do a show tonight. For the love of God, help me out. I'm just joking. Sorry. It's been a long day.
So for everybody who may not have seen it, Kevin had a pretty good interview series with Wyatt Black, Alan Tenta, and Mikey. What's Mikey's last name?
Hillon.
Hillen, yes, from Alone season 10. If you haven't seen it yet, it was a really good episode. Obviously, I'm really going to like it because I had Wyatt on the show. Got the opportunity to meet him this past weekend at a show in Barrie, and it was a really good time. But great fireside chat. I had a good time. And who you doing next? Who's your next fireside chat? Can you give people a hint?
Adam Schultz, November 6th, so we'll be out after that. I got a whole bunch too. I got a bunch. You got a really quick story about the interview I did with the Alone guys too. Really quick was I got it all on Zoom, and I had the cheap Zoom, so we were allowed 40 minutes. But Wyatt couldn't figure out the code. I'm not sure what was going on, so we were late. And then everybody was kind of like, "Who's this guy, Kevin?" They didn't know who I was, and Wyatt knew me, and it was sort of like, oh, group dynamics is all going to hell. And so I did the first interview for probably only 20 minutes. And then I said, hey, guys, do you want me to call you back and we'll do another one? I can just rebook it. And they're like, yeah. And I don't know. Watch the second version of it. I don't know if they knew they were being recorded. Because they really talked about the show and how the show really did work, in one sense. And they also had a little too much whiskey. I mean, when I do my whiskey chats, if people don't know this, well, I'm having whiskey tonight, but a lot of times there'll be tea in here because I do a lot of whiskey chats. I'm not going to drink whiskey all the time. So, but those guys were, well, except Mikey, he doesn't drink. But yeah, they were drinking. We did like an hour and a half interview, and watch to the end. Beautiful people, actually amazing people. They really inspired. It made my day to listen to them. So here's a funny thing, Dennis. During the second part of it, watch me. I didn't say a word. I just listened to them chat for like an hour. I said two things the whole time. And the reason why is I was just fascinated with their life and how they dealt with Alone and the friendship they created and how they helped each other and how they helped Mikey with his son that was autistic. And just watch it. You guys out there would laugh your buns off just to watch Kevin not talk for an hour.
To hear Kevin not talk for an hour on a 40-minute show. Okay.
It was unbelievable. Yeah.
No, that was good though. But you had a good one. I look forward to seeing the one with Adam Schultz after you shoot that, because I've actually read his book twice because the first time was rushed. I had to read it a second time. It was really good, and I got to see his presentation the day after we had him on the show here. So. Got to see a lot of Adam here over that 1 week period, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love doing the whiskey chats. I'm interviewing Adam. He's been through media a lot, so let's just say the questions I'm going to ask him, nobody's asked him yet. So yeah.
And interestingly enough, tonight we were supposed to be joined by Nate Muskoka was going to join us as well, because he really knows his gear as well. But surprisingly enough, he had to back out because he had forgot that he had tickets to see Adam Schultz's presentation tonight in Huntsville.
Wow.
So
it's cool.
We missed you, Nate. Anyways, we're going to close up shop here for the night. And I just want to leave everybody with this one really cool, take it for yourself. If you ever find yourself at a campsite and wonder to yourself, did someone pee here? The answer is yes. Thanks, Untamed Ontario. Great way to finish off the show. Kevin, I'll see you in the green room here in a short moment, and we'll talk soon, buddy. Anyways, hopefully everybody got something out of tonight's show. I love that saying, Untamed America or Ontario. That's awesome. But yeah, so just to let everybody know that if you haven't already done so, hit that thumbs up. It really, 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 really helps the show with the YouTube algorithms. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. And you know what? We're going to have ourselves a great week. But just to let you know that there is a possibility that I may not be having a show next week because it's Halloween. The doorbell will be ringing. The dog will be going nuts. And I think I'm going to spend a little time with my grandkids and get them out trick-or-treating. So I'm really looking forward to that, especially with my 1-year-old grandson. And I think family time is important. Anyways, have yourselves a great week, everybody. And remember, please do keep the adventures alive. Until next time.